Hello, and welcome to Spotlight here, live on GRAPPL Patreon. As always, I'm Benno.
I'm JP.
And I'm Gareth.
What do you reckon, Gareth? I've messed around with that intro a little bit. I know you're a big fan of the intro strong that the StreamYard gives you. I've dropped the official podcast of GRAPPL because it makes it sound like GRAPPL, the app still exists type of thing. I kept going until the live show. I don't know if this is just a headcanon thing just for me only, but I've officially retired it now. And I'm still workshopping what the intro should be instead. But I don't know. One of you noticed, and welcome back. What do you think?
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? As opposed to the official podcast of the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. It made sense when there was an app. No offense, RIP in peace, whatever that new one's called. All kids are using bodyslam.com or whatever it's called. Hope you're all having a great time, but I don't know. It needs to change it.
Mugs game, get out.
But if you want a database, there might be one going for people.
Absolutely.
And the one with the links section. Specifics.
Oh yeah, there is. There's been a couple of contenders over the years, but yeah, we are live here with our patrons and YouTube members as always. First time we've had you on this month, Gareth. Hard to get a hold of. You could be anywhere at any given time. Portugal, lots of places. How's it going? Good to have you on for this first show on the 14th of October, mate. Slacking, unbelievable. Get you for the big ones. That's what it is.
I'd like to say I was feeling refreshed because Dealer's Choice month. It's fucking hard work, isn't it? Dealer's Choice, it's a slog when you get to the end of it with the amount of watching that and you've cleared that backlog. Well, for me anyway, it's good. Oh, great! I can have a little break now. Not you fuckers. You're day after, right? I've got to do a midweek news dump, or I've got to do a weekend show, or something like that. So, but for me,
No Mercy 2001 was the answer this month. I don't know what we were thinking. We usually schedule it a sneaky 5-1 or an observe this, a non-homework one is usually what we do. We just started to go full force into a 3-hour review of a WWF pay-per-view from 2001. Although, to be fair, for anyone who's listened, and there'll be a bit of that audio in the audio here. We didn't really talk about the show, at least not until an hour and 15 minutes into it. So it felt like a break, even if it wasn't.
Oh, outstanding that show. It was honestly just pissing myself throughout. And to be honest, I was disappointed when you actually got onto the show because I could have just listened to you talk about green tomato ketchup and Haven holiday reps and what have you kind of thing for another 3 hours or something quite comfortably. But brilliant! It's just great when you've got Hamflet on as well because I don't know, it's seamless. It's you've been podcasting with him forever, and it's just it just feels such.
That's our plan. Hold them hostage, and we will podcast forever.
Well, he's enjoying it. He's enjoying it. So there you go.
So he's game for that.
Yeah, I think we can work something out. There could be something in the pipeline potentially, but yeah, it reminds me of old spotlights, JP, where it was just an hour and a half of just nonsense, and then into the actual. Tonight, we're not doing a pre-show tonight, as Matty's at the Fed House show of all places in Liverpool. So no pre-show, so a little bit of an old school feel, straight live with the patrons.
Oh, I'm loving that. But I mean, I was surprised he was at a house show. As well, because I thought that photo with him and Charles Robinson, that was from today.
Yeah,
right? That was.
Of course, he bumped into him. Of course, he did.
I was going to say, imagine. What did he say? He said he saw Chad Gable around, keeping his head down, not talking to anyone.
Yeah, apparently he missed Jacob Fatu around the Albert Dock. I went into town earlier. I had my. Similar to what we've just had before we went live, I was having some tech issues with the work laptop, and I had to go into the office today. And on the way in, I saw a Daniel Bryan Yes Movement t-shirt. Then I saw a Roman Reigns t-shirt. And it was only when I saw the second t-shirt I was firstly I was is that Matty? No, it's not. And then I was oh fuck, they're in town, aren't we? And then I started getting a lot of messages from Matty coming through about his whereabouts today. We said we haven't got a pre-show tonight. We might have a pre-show that just happens halfway through the recording tonight. We're going to keep everybody on the toes because he has threatened to ring in from not the Echo Arena, what's it called now, Gareth? The M&S Bank Arena, I think that's what it's called. From there, I don't know if they got good Wi-Fi. Maybe they do. It's only down the road. I could pop down and see, but yeah, he's been seeing all the celebs. Unfortunately, I haven't seen anybody good. I haven't seen Cody's tour bus. Apparently, he was at Man City today. There's something those two might have in common. I don't know, but yeah, no other good sightings, unfortunately. Was he?
He was on News Round. I didn't see the piece. I came in and George said to me, "Oh, Cody Rhodes was on News Round." And I looked at him and I thought, was he taking a piss or something? I'm not quite sure. It wasn't a sense I was ever expecting him to say. and it was like, lo and behold, yeah, he was on there. I don't know what he was. It's not John Craven anymore.
I was going to say, throwing out the challenge to John Craven there, is it?
He's too busy. He's obviously working that push on Country File, isn't he? And that's where Craven is.
Proper midday wars. That's what they are. Like we said in the weekend show, JP, crime watch in the morning. It's not right the TV schedule these days. But do we have anything to cover before we get into the wrestling, non-wrestling wise? Obviously, with no pre-show. Feel like we should save Scran of the Week. That's sacred until Matty's back. I had a cracking salt and pepper box from one of the chippies near me, but I'll save that chat for maybe next Sunday. You got into fill us in on anything there special going on there while you were away, Gareth? You know, hopping on flights here and there.
Look at hell! I had 4 days in Porto.
I'm starting this rumour you're spending the GRAPPL millions, mate. That's what all the big cartel money went on. All those black t-shirts, you know.
It was the it was one of those bizarre situations where Sarah got a great deal, and for my birthday booked us to Porto, where she got cheap Ryanair flights and cheap Airbnb for the weekend for, you know. I think it was like 50 quid for the flights and then not that expensive for the hotel. And somehow I've walked away from it having spent 400 quid or something like that myself, you know. And like, thinking, hang about, wasn't this my birthday? Like,
you don't get a birthday. You're a man over a certain age. They don't exist anymore. Maybe big numbers if you're lucky. That's all you got in a JP.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, your birthday. I mean, he knows this, but your birthday goes. So it just gets taken over by the kids. And it's just merely a pit stop to whoever's birthday's next. So who's the next birthday after yours in this case? Is it Sadie or Alex?
Oh, well, it was that. This is going all the way back to August. So Alex's came after mine, but I've got a fucking nightmare because it's like Christmas, obviously, and then Sadie's is on the 31st and Sarah's is on the 30th of December. So in like 1 week there, you've got like Christmas and then the 2 birthdays. So
it's a lot of ideas to come up with.
Not a good time, that.
Yeah, it's like with my mum, it's a birthday, it's Mother's Day, and it's Christmas, all pretty much in like a 2.5 month span. It's fucking like I've got to think of 3 ideas for presents in those 2.5 months, and then I get the rest of the year off, so I can kind of chill. But like, I don't know, flowers and chocolates. Can you do that 3 times in a row? I don't know. Saying that, it's actually my stepdad's birthday tomorrow. It's his 60th. So if anybody has any good ideas for gift ideas for 60-year-olds that isn't beer that I know we won't drink, let me know. I can't really. It's one of them. It's same thing for me.
A lovely GRAPPL t-shirt, mate. Honestly.
There you go. Yeah, get one of them. Get one of nice GRAPPL hoodie, maybe JP. Nice GRAPPL hat.
Exactly.
See where you going. I know a discount code I could maybe flog. You know,
give him that 10% off at Chopped Tees, chopped-tees.com. Come on.
And a gift subscription to the Patreon, maybe throw that out.
I was going to say a gift King of the Mountain. See what he comes up with for his special show.
World of Sport.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, something boxing related. I would imagine. But
up for that. Said that 4 Kings documentary. It's on Amazon.
Oh, it's really good. I knew nothing of the history. I didn't know anything about it. Like other than, well, I say nothing. Obviously knowing the big names and kind of vaguely being aware of them all being big stars, but I didn't really know the ins and outs of what was it? Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank, Lennox Lewis, and
Bruno.
Bruno, of course, Frank Bruno, the big star, the Hogan.
I mean, this is very much pre-show chat, but I wasn't prepared for the scene of what looked like Chris Eubank getting fucked up in a room on Wheeze. Like, I was just like, I didn't see that happening, and he just stood there. I was like, yeah, that's a blunt that as well, isn't he? It's like he's not fucking around with any tobacco in that joint. Like he's straight on it, this fella.
They do a great job of being like, so Chris, all the other guys have said they've had a lot of mental health problems over the years. How about you? Any? And he's like, no, I'm fine. I'm all right. That's just like, okay, mate. All right, no worries. we had to ask. It's fucking boss, though. It's a really good watch. High recommend.
Yeah, definitely high recommend for that.
I definitely want to watch that because those were just glory days, like back when loads of boxing was on the TV and like the Ben Eubank at that time and things like it was just growing up. It just felt like it almost felt like there was a fight on every month or something of like, you know, within with them lads. It felt like they had such high profile and just great time. So what's that on? Is that on Netflix?
Amazon Prime.
Is it on Prime? Yeah.
Back then, of course, not an advert for Riyadh season in sight, so you didn't have to worry about that at all. They just had the fucking fights. The end of it.
Yeah, the world has changed. If you're missing Matty, by the way, there's one of those fucking shit shows coming up in a mere few weeks. But yeah, luckily that's why we got Gareth in. It's an AEW pay-per-view week to get into. But before we get into that, any other plugs we need to throw out, JP? Feel like we started off there, anything to say? Obviously, yeah, No Mercy 2001 with me, Hamflet and Matty. Yep. Always a fun time with him. We'll be completing our 2001 Fed out to see by sometime next month, probably, or maybe we're completing it. Maybe we're not. We'll see what happens going forward. Oh, we got Shane coming as well.
I was going to say
homework, NJP. I haven't started yet. I had a 17-hour pay-per-view I was watching on Saturday night, and I've only just recovered from rewatching some of the highlights today. But I'll be up to speed by time of recording. That'll be out midweek, probably Tuesday night / Wednesday morning.
I started on it. I accidentally started on the sickos list, and I was like, "Oh by Christ, this is going to be a struggle." And then I realized, actually, I can pare this fucker down. Really, there isn't going to be that much there. So, like, I'm in the main, like, I'm quietly confident about getting that ready for tomorrow night, which will just be the test of my thesis: is Shane McMahon the best bad wrestler in the world? We'll find out tomorrow, won't we? Live for all of you on the King of the Man on the live for all the live tier subscribers.
So yeah, we'll be recording that. Dealer's Choice is out as well from last month, and obviously Shane coming up, plenty more where that came from this month. The next episode of GRAPPL Lads will be dropping as well, and yeah, obviously Shane and Halloween horror kind of wrapping up the month. JP as we'll obviously be taking some votes on more of a modern twist on the Halloween horror, but plenty in the archives for people to check out both on demand and live. But yeah, on that note, speaking of what we've had going on the Patreon, me and you got to have a great little heart to heart on Thursday, JP, when we recorded the weekend show, the intro news item about the AEW and NXT ratings turned into a Dynamite review, which turned into a State of AEW podcast, which is a thing we're kind of known for at this point at various points. But that kind of happened, and there was a lot of bad feeling going into that Thursday weekend show as we recorded it. Obviously, we can talk about this pay-per-view we're going to get into today, but yeah, always the point, Gareth, where we kind of catch up with you and ask how hard the homework was to get you caught up again with the AEW product. But were you feeling that bad feeling going into last week? And now that the evil bastard Jimmy Jacobs has gone, it's like Vince McMahon. We've chopped the head off the snake now, so everything's going to be great. The pay-per-view was fantastic, and there was nothing to be sad about on Thursday. All is resolved.
Oh, I was listening to you on that weekend show, and I was just thinking, like, oh God, this just echoes the way I feel. Good.
I thought we were a bit much.
Oh no, completely. If anything, I was thinking like I was probably feeling even worse to be honest. Like I think I've now, prior to watching this pay-per-view, I think I'd just hit the wall with it, where I was like, me, completist and things, literally just sitting there thinking, why am I watching this? What is the purpose of me watching this anymore, other than the fact that you're talking about it on a podcast? And it was like, is that a strong enough reason to be watching a TV show week to week? Because I'm not sure I'm getting any enjoyment out of this at all. And I was like, I'm starting to sit back and look at everyone and how many of these wrestlers do I actually care about? How many of them are actually doing something that I've got a modicum of interest in? And I'm sitting there scrolling down the AEW roster page nope, kind of. So it was listening to you talk about it, I was like, this is just totally just putting me in that reaffirming the headspace I'm in, and just thinking about fuck me, something needs to change, because God, I mean, I'm literally at the depths of it there, where I'm now thinking why what? Why watch it? What's the point?
Well, it could be worse. You could be at a Fed House show tonight, so things are roundabouts. There's positives to being a wrestling podcaster. But yeah, it's one of them. I don't think I've changed really kind of how I feel come Thursday. A lot of the proof in the pudding of the things I'd liked and some things I didn't like. This mostly well received pay per view from this weekend. Still, the test is going to be the TV going forward and such, JP. But yeah, that's kind of how we were feeling come Thursday. I don't know if in all truth, we've got the Jimmy Jacobs story down as a news story to get into through the show. As has been stated by many people, yes, Jimmy Jacobs is gone. Yes, the bad man had the bad ideas, but the our best friend Tony Khan, who is the man overseeing all of this stuff, is also the man signing the checks and agreeing for everything to land on TV. So, I had mixed thoughts with that when that story dropped over the weekend. Maybe it's my bias, JP. I was a big fan of the Ballad of Lacey, and that was pretty much it in Jimmy Jacobs' ROH career. The BJ Bitwist stuff was good too, but yeah, I don't know if that's a simplistic solution, but I am glad, just to follow up on our weekend show conversation. Big part of that conversation was us saying, remember the last time AEW had a wake up call like Tuesday's Dynamite with barely 2,000 people in attendance this time round and an all time record rating. It just sent reminders of that the big Dark Order Dynamite when Tony Khan took back control allegedly of the promotion and stopped having maybe too much input from EVPs. My question to you on that weekend show was, is there anything like that Tony Khan could actually do? Because to our mind, Tony Khan's obviously the man in charge, and often the can be the problem with stuff like that, as well as a positive force at times. But taking Jimmy Jacobs out, even if it isn't necessarily a full solution, it's a sign that maybe there's an acknowledgement that something has to change, and it feels like there might be a sea change, at least in approach.
Yeah, you can't pin all the problems of AEW in the last 18 months on Jimmy Jacobs. That wouldn't be fair. I think there's a general critique that I would buy into, which is this is what happens when you have a group of people who are effectively trained in their jobs from WWE, and you bring them in and they kind of end up dominating backstage. It's like, well, what do they know? What's their frame of reference? Their frame of reference is always going to be WWE. And this is a problem, and this has always been a problem. And like eventually you might think, well, yeah, maybe we do need to think outside of the box. Outside of the box, we have to think in a non-WWE way, which I'm sure we'll get onto the ending of the show and we'll think about it like that and go, well, maybe that is a sign of a direction, because that's not the kind of angle you would ever see in WWE. But it's a start. I think it's more of an acknowledgement. What it can't be is just seen as a scapegoating. I'm not talking about Jack Perry here, but just like using one person. Oh, they're gone, so that's the problem with it. Because I looked at him and I always thought, well, who is he the writer for? Yeah. Who was the person who probably pushed for him to come in? Because also that same person appeared second from the fucking top on this card.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Bryan Danielson, because it's Danielson who pushed for him. It is Danielson who got him his job in WWE and got him his job in AEW. Yeah, he's the one who introduced him to Tony Khan. I mean, Danielson also thinks Glenn Jacobs is one of the smartest men on planet Earth, so wrestlers on the judgment, who can say? But yeah, that's allegedly the story there. But it's a simplistic way of looking at it, isn't it? Obviously, it's more complex than that. I also hate the opposite. I hate the kind of, I mentioned that on weekend show, but like this idea that like all delegation is bad because Tony Khan has delegated badly, because he's got 27 writers in a room. Therefore, and what we need to do is get rid of all the writers and leave Tony Khan in sole control again. He shares the credit for AEW's successes and business successes, obviously, that we talked about a couple of weeks ago with the gigantic TV deal coming in. But he also, shares very much the blame for when things are going off the boil. And if even as JP said, like every bad idea that ever happened on AEW TV was the result of the brain of Jimmy Jacobs, well, Tony Khan's still a man who's ticking that box and agreeing for that to go on telly. So yeah, I think the fault in the delegation still lies with him.
Yeah, and I think like a big part of that is like, I think there's almost this kind of like lost vision for, obviously it's been like chase the TV deal on one front, and it's obviously that's massively critical to the future of the company and like the level of money that they can bring in there. But it's like chasing that without like looking after keeping your house in order, really. And I almost feel like they've just lost that kind of like, I don't know. It feels like they've just like lost that vision of what they are, who they are, what they're all about. And I think like a bit, they'll throw out these lines like we're the best wrestle or getting the feeling back and things like that as well. But then like they're sort of a bit hollow and a bit meaningless with nothing behind them. Like, so just say stuff and somebody appears on telly who's been off for a month. Yeah, the feeling's back because this guy's back or something like that. But actually, you sort of got to take a step back and you think about like them first successful years and it even getting off the ground. And it's like, it was needed. It was a necessary promotion to come into the like wrestling landscape that was because something new was needed, something fresh was needed, something different was needed, and that's why it was successful. Like early on, and there is like now when you look at the product or you look at the products going into that pay-per-view, really, there's sort of not much about the products that is new or is fresh or is different, like really. And I think it has just sort of like towed that line more and more to being sort of that WWE 1B kind of thing. And if it's like, well, if that's what you're going to be, and not have this unique central selling point of what you stand for as a promotion and what all of your booking decisions and everything like that center around this one idea, then it's just sort of chaos, isn't it? Really, in the background, that hear a lot of things about it's week to week and things like that as well, and you think, well, how can you sort of operate on that basis? And Khan doesn't strike you as a non-chaotic person at the best of times either. Kind of think so. And when the book stops with him, and like really, when there's when you think about it, if there's 27 writers and you're talking about 2 hours of TV on Dynamite, and the reality is an hour of that show is them just throwing some fucking matches out there. What they're fucking doing with the time? Like, how are they filling the time? These 27 people, like, they're clearly not coming up with ideas for things because there's just not enough substance there behind it anyway. So it almost just feels like it's back to that, as you say, that New Year's, end of the year, line in the sand, start again sort of thing. And they almost needs to take that step back and move forward, because I can't think, can't even quantify the amount of times that my hopes have got me up here, and then like within 2 weeks I'm fucking back on the floor again, kind of thing, as I buy into something that's happened on a pay-per-view or an angle that's been really good, and you think, yes, now this is it, now they're going to follow up on this, and it doesn't happen because there's no kind of like depth or thought about the follow-on. And I don't know. This is the world we're in, operating on that basis. Just need a bit of consistency.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. And it's like they're going to get into this pay-per-view, and I imagine there'll be lots positive to say. And I think just scanning our Discord and just generally the normal places I follow stuff like this, I think generally people are positive coming out of it. To get into the overall, I'm a little bit more mixed. I'm overall positive. I'm just kind of like, some of the things I'm positive on, I'm like, okay, yeah, but let's see what happens on Wednesday. Let's see if Brody King's still a character in AEW come Wednesday. Let's see, if there's follow-up for Jay White. Let's see. Don't really like them, but if you're gonna try, what's the follow-up with, with Private Party? Like, are these, Hologram and Beast Mortos? Yeah, you put them on the pay-per-view and they had a good match. I would argue not a great match. Are they going to be characters come Wednesday again? Or is it just going to be, again, this chopping and changing? The end angle, which, I think we're probably going to end up starting off with, because how can you not talk about it? It's going to be the follow-up to that. Like, I've seen there's been a lot of discourse about this end angle, and a lot of it is, circled around the idea of it being a negative angle, and not a happy ending, I suppose. And I'm sympathetic, at least in principle, to some of the good faith takes kind of I've seen with that, and maybe questioning even myself. Okay, yeah, we're in a world now where, as we've just talked about, going into this pay-per-view, just in general, I felt like everyone to a man, even the most hardcore AEW fans, were quite negative on AEW going into this weekend. So it's quite a thing to have that be the weekend you run the sad ending on the pay-per-view. And it is a thing to kind of think, yeah, obviously there's a place for that in storytelling and filmmaking, as you'll talk about, I'm sure, JP. But a lot of that comes as well with wrestling. It's with the follow-up. So Will Cooling tweet, AEW is the home of the heels right now, because coming out of this pay-per-view, every belt is on a heel. It's kind of like, oh, that's a lot of bad feeling. You want, you don't want plastic WWE to soak up all the, Matty's having a great time queuing for his t-shirt tonight, but to have all the good feeling on that side and all the bad feeling on that. So the follow-up is going to be paramount. The follow-up to that end angle is going to be paramount, or the characters who were placed in, potentially the place to avenge Bryan Danielson, going to be in those places when we check in again in 6 weeks or whatever the next pay-per-view is. Gareth, is Daniel Garcia, is Orange Cassidy, is, name your list, Darby Allin going to be, or Jeff Jarrett, or in the words of Jim Ross, oh no, not Jeff Jarrett, going to be in those positions going forward. So, a lot of that is kind of for me as well, but I mean, what feeling did that angle at the end of the pay-per-view and the pay-per-view as a whole kind of leave you with, Gareth? Did you come out of it with more of a feeling of hope compared to how you felt maybe the middle of last week after the Dynamite, or I don't know, did it appeal to you, the way they executed that angle in general?
I think, I came away at the end of it feeling something, which I thought, that's good, of thing. That's good for a start, like caring. that always helps, kind of thing, when you're like trying to be invested in a product, or you should be like invested in a product, like one way or another, especially where I've started to feel a bit of not caring about a lot that's gone on within AEW for certainly the last couple of months. I think the problem I have is that, like, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the execution of it. I felt like the way it was done, it should mean something. I think Bryan Danielson doing that and going out in that way, sort of thing, it should be something that is a catalyst for something. It should have value. Like he would do that, wanting it to have value. Problem for me is that, like, I've just got no trust in AEW anymore, and I was sort of almost feeling like at the end of this, like, initially when I finished watching it, I had that kind of like, oh yeah, it was a good, enjoyable show. Like, it was that was good. I enjoyed that, like, end angle. It felt different. It felt like fresh. It felt like alternative and things like that. And then as sort of like an hour went by and another hour went by, I was just sort of thinking, like, yeah, how many times have I been sat here thinking this, and then now I'm just sort of left thinking a bit of like, well, so what? What's next, kind of thing? And I just have this kind of like fear and expectation that something's going to be executed like that, and in 3 weeks' time, it's just going to be all for naught because shit's just going to have just fallen out of the window, and it just doesn't matter anymore. And people who were involved are now off TV, and like there is no depth of story to go beyond this because it hasn't been planned out beyond the executing the angle on the night and things like that as well, really. So that's the point that I'm at with AEW, is that I've just got zero trust in their ability to take things forward, and I think that's kind of like a big that's a big hurdle. We talk about, like, or you guys were talking the other day about, like, declining metrics in all areas and things like that. There's a reason for that, and it's because people losing faith and things like that, losing that connection with the company and things, and that is like rebuilding trust in something. That you don't do that like with the flick of a switch. This is something that they're going to have to, over the next weeks and months, kind of like consistently deliver on things like that and demonstrate that they are taking care of the small details and they have put thought into what comes next. And there are seeds there on last night's show that, like, maybe they have taken on board some elements of feedback here about the need for fresh faces, or the need to be pushing certain people a bit more, or getting them involved a bit more. But again, we'll fucking turn around and do a full gear review in a month's time or whatever, Benno, and we'll be just talking about the same problem. So that appears to be the cycle that I'm perpetually stuck in for the past 2 years.
I had a feeling of deja vu there, JP, because, like, again, if people are wanting some positive, there's plenty to give. I think dotted up and down that pay-per-view. There was a middle section which I definitely felt like I was up late on a Saturday night watching Collision, for good and bad, that made it a little bit of a slog. But overall, there's bits and pieces I'm going to massively praise. So fast forward if you do want to get to that. But that is kind of my take coming out of it. It's like, yeah, the reason I felt deja vu actually primarily because it reminded me the last time they ran this very similar angle, and that was a big thing. Like, I just want to throw out the bad faith criticism of, like, this angle at the end of the show being too violent or whatever your stuff is. Like, it was not even a patch on the last time they did it, Like, I've got some criticism, like the picture behind you, JP. I didn't think the Wheeler Yuta stuff. I don't know. I think he'd probably better off as a babyface than the fifth string heel in this unit going forward. I'm sure you might share that thought a little bit. I had some criticism of again the way the commentary dealt with it. Jim Ross specifically, like I say, jumping on Jeff Jarrett, or even when the rest of the babyfaces came out, being like, "Wait, you guys!" Yeah, the fucking grumpy nice did Jim Ross. He was not Excalibur fake crying. Those are the bits I didn't like about it. There was no issue with the level of violence, if anything. I feel like it was lesser than last time, which might be something of a problem with it. I think they're kind of my issues, and my bigger one is, the follow-up, as Gareth has said. What comes next? because last time they did this angle, a very similar angle, we then had 4 weeks of TV that didn't really connect the dots to get us excited for Bryan and Moxley. Moxley cut some great promos, but the follow-up wasn't great. The follow-up was weird. Bryan was, working Nigel 1 week, which I loved, and then then he was working Jack Perry on a pay-per-view, and then we got here, and I feel like Bryan's title run actually in general is a good kind of descriptor of the AEW story across time. But they're kind of we've lived this before, haven't we, JP? And we've had this conversation many times.
It feels like we're in Groundhog Day for this, and it's funny. I had a very similar kind of experience what Gareth had, which was in the moment I really liked it. And I liked it because of the bleakness. Because I thought in some ways that's the logical ending to all of this. How does someone retire happily in defeat, losing their title and everything else? That would be more fake than anything. And instead, he's got his former friends beating the ever-loving shit out of him. It was then just after that you start to then think about it that bit deeper. And it was like the Wheeler Yuta stuff. And I was like, so why were we doing that for the last couple of weeks? Like, really? And also, why are they heels? I think Will's brought this up in the chat. I did think to myself, like, we need to know their motivation as a group. Like, what is exactly the aim of it? Because it's been stuff they've spoken about, but it's been in such cryptic terms and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And I think this gets into the bigger thing of the last few weeks. It's been full of plot holes. And that's a problem because it's a thing that was very much, that was WWE territory. That's what they did. They were the company with plot holes. They were the company that didn't make sense, that ran stuff, and you were like, well, what the fuck is this about? This just doesn't, like, where are we going with all of this? And I didn't like the idea that Darby Allin is the person who's going to end up defending the honor. That just didn't sit right with me. But the idea of a bleak ending, it wasn't overly violent. I think it didn't give people what they want. But then again, if you've watched any major episodic big drama over the last few years, you're doing the Sopranos rewatch. That didn't give you what you want. They killed off loads of characters that you loved. It's horrible. But you know,
There's a certain fan who wanted that, but generally, not the proper fans like me.
In the main, that kind of adds more to the pathos of all of this. There should be like a very depressed locker room that Danielson's gone. It's just I don't have the faith because one of the issues, it's all of the other issues around the show about just the bloated nature of the company. That's going to take so much airspace from what this angle should be. And this should be the dominating thing on TV. And it didn't also help that we had a similar type angle with Carl Fletcher earlier on that night as well, which wasn't a million miles away from something that was kind of vaguely similar to this. So, I think this potential harder edged version of AEW that's slightly more adult, I think that is something that I'm much keener on because WWE won't go this far. In fairness to WWE, they've kind of tempted stuff like this, like the Bronson Reed, Seth Rollins angle and stuff like that. That was like, okay, that's kind of like a step in the right direction for them. I liked the idea of heels being booed out of the building and not giving the kind of happy ending to the audience. I don't mind them being left shell-shocked. I'm fine with things like that. I mean, this should be, like I said before, it fits into what this overall story and angle should be. It's just like you say, the issue is this lack of faith that we have that they're going to do this, because now we're at the point we've been teased this stuff a lot of times and then they sort of lose interest and it ends up going down a silly path and they don't pay off on stuff. And those inconsistencies in the writing over the last few weeks in particular left me kind of worried about, okay, well, all of a sudden they're going to suddenly get everything back on track. It's hard to believe that.
Yeah, and like I say, the positive for me is I've been very into this Mox character. Kind of against type for me because, I'm not the biggest Mox fan. I've appeared on a Jon Moxley podcast, but for me, he's never someone who's fully connected with me. His first title run, one of the better AEW title runs. The subsequent ones with the various belts he's had, I've been more mixed on. So for me to be in a position where I'm like, all right, with all that said, this particular version of Jon Moxley could be something interesting with the title does say something, to at least the quality of the work he's done. It's just dotting those I's and crossing those T's, and the content of it going forward, and what they do there. But absolutely, with you in that. There's nothing wrong with it, with a sad angle in general. Again, it coming this week of all weeks is interesting, but it's something to rise from. And that's the thing about Danielson's involvement in this as well. Like, I don't think, again, the criticism we gave going into weekend show, I don't think they did a great job really of selling that this could potentially be Bryan's last match. That Dynamite last week was pretty nondescript, really, from Danielson for his last full-time match. But the answer to that might be that's because, presumably, with what does a full-time schedule mean these days in wrestling, he's going to be back. And they can pay this off with Bryan as well at some point as well. So it sets that up too as well, doesn't it? And depending on who Mox loses to, it sets somebody up there as well. So there are positive things that can absolutely come from it, I'd say, Gareth.
That's it. And when you leave things open like that, and there are as always with AEW, it almost feels like there's multiple lanes. We get excited, we talk about things. Oh, this could happen, or this could happen, or you think about these like these different layers and things like that could be it, and then it ends up that there's no layers at all, and it just something changes, and it just something random happens, and we're going off in a different direction altogether the following week. And again, that's just that's been such a big part of the problem with it. I mean, hark back to that last show when they ran the big angle like this. Like, I remember being on here and been also like, oh god, it's like a really violent feud here between Moxley and Bryan Danielson. Like, that's something that I'd be compelled to want to watch Dynamite immediately, like every single week, and I was excited for that, and then they just didn't deliver on that. And the Moxley promos have been great, kind of thing. They've been excellent, but they haven't achieved anything. Like, I could have watched that show and then just watched this show now, and all of that in between was unnecessary. Really, I could have had the same emotion watching this tonight or today, and not watch Dynamite for a whole month from the last time. From the when
that's how the tick and buy public feels. That's why they turn up for the pay-per-views, but not the Dynamites. It's true, isn't it?
Exactly, and that's a problem, because the idea should be that, well, one, it's boosting the week to week ratings. The stuff, they should be joining them dots in between with something interesting and compelling, because that sells tickets, it sells merchandise, it sells pay-per-views further down the line, it sustains an audience, etc. But they don't seem bothered about that. Like, it's almost like, let's just take these kind of touch points along the year where we'll deliver, and what goes in between them, whatever kind of thing. Like, it doesn't matter. But even their Moxley promos, they're intriguing, they're well delivered. There's something there that's like, oh, what's behind this? Or he'll say a line and things. Again, the step back to me with that is, well, then the payoff to this has got to deliver on that then, because they've been so executed so well there. And is that just him executing a good 30-second promo because he's got good delivery and he's got good ideas and things like that, in terms of a bit of verbiage to say on that given day in that in that arena at that time? Or is there actually some mapped out plotted substance that goes beyond that and is saying things because they matter and they're going to pay off down the line based on what is said? Again, so just keep dragging it back down to this level. But that's where I don't have the confidence. I don't have the confidence that this stuff is going to necessarily pay off in some substantive way. And if they try to do that, it almost feels like it'll be shoehorned backwards, as opposed to being something that they've thought about. Right, let's think about 3 months down the line, and if this happens now with Moxley, what then comes to build that story? That's where this lack of delivery that we've just consistently seen seems to come in. But coming back to the point I said before, that feeling that you had at the end of this show, like genuine, like caring about the ending, having how can you not capitalize on that? Because that is so good. And okay, it's bleak and it's dark and it's it's a step in the story that doesn't feel it doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel right. But the idea is that then good will overcome kind of further down the line, and good will overcome or should overcome in a way that's, again, thought out and positive and with the right people doing the right things at the right time. And if they nail that, this could be great. It could help, it could help to turn around. But I think my thoughts on how confident I am about that happening now.
Well, one thing you can set your watch by is AEW will deliver you on a overall good pay-per-views, good matches will always happen. There's plenty of good when it comes to these pay-per-views. Again, leads to maybe the reason why they did a better number for. We said all the negative metrics, good metric. Better number for this edition of WrestleDream as far as tickets sold compared to last year's show. That's a positive, absolutely, and we'll see what the pay-per-view buys look like coming out of it, because it does feel anecdotally like interest was down. But generally, I think you can set your watch by these AEW pay-per-views. But we'll circle back around to the match itself later on. Got plenty positive to say about that. But yeah, we should talk the full pay-per-view itself. And yeah, I assume you guys were with me in the trenches watching live on Saturday night. Wouldn't recommend it for this one. It was a little bit hard going in the second half, but yeah, you managed to get all caught up. JP, I know you were watching this in stages. I presume you didn't watch much of the pre-show. Again, I had that on live. It was in the background. It existed. It was a thing. Don't think we'll spend much time on that.
So when we went to bed, I put the pre-show on ever so briefly, and I went, "Is that Rico?" That's where I was up on this, and I was
You really was.
When the fuck did this happen? Like
Jimmy Jacobs' last stand. That's what that is, isn't it?
It was. And I saw that, and I was like, "Oh Christ!" And I thought I've not missed much with this 0 hour. Him being there merely to pay off the wedding angle of Billy and Chuck all of these years later. A
good angle, to be fair, of its time, but
for its time, very much of its time for that. But I was like, bloody hellfire! Did it need to be on here? Which is like what you could really generally say for the 0 hour. And I've wasted a lot of time watching pre-shows for AEW pay-per-views, and the only thing I'd recommend is the first bit at the beginning where they basically do the countdown shows, which are always really good. The half-hour countdown. Like you say, you don't need to watch the TV. You can just watch that bit and get all the promos and get the good bits from what's happened over in, let's face it, in Dynamite in the previous weeks. But it's a series of matches, series of people wrestling, and I couldn't give less of a shit about each and every one of them.
I was actively thinking watching it, especially during the multi-person main event of the 0 hour, being like, I'm not saying I'd drop a bomb on the arena. Let's say not a literal bomb, a figurative bomb, as far as basically it's either everyone in this pre-show gets sacked or nobody on this pre-show gets sacked. Would I press that button? And I think, I do really like Orange Cassidy, so I don't think I can. But if you take him out of the mix, Dark Order, yeah, they can fuck off. Premier Athletes, they can fuck off. I kind of like the Outrunners. I'll let them off. Acclaimed, they can fuck off. MXN Collection, they shouldn't be there in the first place to fuck off. I'll probably keep Rico over them. Harley Cameron, she's been funny, but she can fuck off. I'd take that. Anna Jay, I'm all right with going. Brian Cage, I'm all right with going. Even Atlantis had a decent little opener if you're into that type of thing at 10 to 11 or whatever time that was on Saturday night, because that's what you need on top of a 4 hour pay-per-view, a long pre-show and matches starting earlier every time. But yeah, it was a bit it was All In, where people just kept coming out, and I was in the stadium just going what if who does this gain, other than it means Tony Khan can look them in the eye for one more week and give them the little gold star and go, you still work for me, go on, Dark Order lads, I'll see you in the bar later on. You've you got your booking for the month. It's sound, it's still good. That's what this pre-show was. That's all it is really at this point. There's no, how many years have we been saying about it before they were AEW, the original All In? It was I don't think these guys understand what a pre-show is. The early days of AEW with the library and all that stuff we always bring up, don't think this is selling anybody on it. If anything, it would actively put me off some of the stuff they put on these shows. But yeah, none of it individually worth of any analysis, I would say, outside of Arman Rico, I'd say, Gareth.
I didn't watch it. Obviously, I flew back today, and I had a window of watching this pay-per-view, and I was like, yeah, I'm damned if I'm watching the pre-show, like to threaten kind of being able to watch the main show in some reasonable time. But I almost just feel like you pull a string on my back at this point, and I'll just be saying, like, pre-show should be there to sell late stragglers to actually put their hands in the pocket and buy a pay-per-view. And like, if you think that this is the route to doing that, then just close the doors now and just forget about the TV deal, because like, like, honestly, like, no idea what they're thinking with this at all. And yeah, I haven't watched it, and I never will. That completist tag's out of the window, mate.
Rico mixtape, JP, maybe one day.
We're gonna have to scout all that OVW footage where apparently he was brilliant at that point, wasn't he? Like, which that was the big talk at the time, wasn't it? It's like, he's great in OVW.
Bit old though, when he compared to the rest. That was the other talking about. He was probably like 28 or something. Apparently, he's a nice real life story. Apparently, he's had like health issues and stuff, and this is his first. I think they said first in ring action in 20 years. But again, probably as challenger brand, as the alternative, probably not something I'd lead into. But again, I'm not the man who would sign MXM Collection in the first place.
No. And that's it. They're like very much a one-note joke, and they're not even kind of funny in the way that the Outrunners. That joke has potential to have a bit of legs to it and move on, and things like that, with their kind of like 80s wrestling references. But my thought, when even just thinking of this now, is going, well, what's the job again? We've said this so many times. What's the job of a pre-show? To entice you to buy. So you're thinking to yourself, I'm on the fence. I might want to watch some wrestling tonight. Well, you've already had 4 matches for free on YouTube. You're probably going to be quite fucking tired by that point. Go, do I need to see another 9 matches? And then with another couple of angles chucked into the mix as well. You're going to be thinking, yeah, I can fuck this off. Like, I don't need to worry too much about it. And they don't think of it in that way. I mean, I would have thought, like, do you know how many pre-show matches you used to have before it? At most 1. I'm not even sure if you need that. And that's just more there to warm a crowd up before the main show. That would be the purpose of that in there. If anything, I would just sooner they just replayed the countdown show, because I think that does the job with maybe a couple of like brief interviews. And if you want that panel to do that, like I would be fine with that. But the way it is at the minute, if you're watching that and then you're watching this show, and that's like 5.5 hours, you are knackered by the end of it. And I tell you what, like you said earlier on, you were feeling it when just after halfway on this show, and it was like, and I looked at the time and I went, I'm going to have to take a break. There's like 2.5 hours left here and I'm fucking knackered.
Yeah, my salt and pepper box definitely didn't help, but I did actually fall asleep at one point later on. But caught up again today, and I was very much awake for that's all we need to say about the pre-show. The open to this main show, as we kicked off the main show with on the quiet, one of my favourite matches of the show, Jay White and Hangman Page, in a match that obviously when we previewed it, we talked about like the kind of strange like makeup of this match, Gareth. Obviously, Jay White being a babyface, and again, it's one of those things where it feels like the ticket buying Dynamite audience maybe weren't fully clued in on that, based on his promo on Dynamite for the go home of this. And I kind of said it myself, like Hangman Page is one of those. I love for all the positives of the character, like this conflicted, justified heel type. It can depend sometimes how it's effective for Hangman, but what that does to the person who's on the opposite end of the ring to them, which was Jay White in this spot. So I was pretty negative going into the match on Jay White's prospects as a babyface, but coming out of it, I don't know whether I'm fully changed on that side of it. But as far as performance-wise, and as far as at least the mechanics of the match, I'll hand over to you, Gareth. I thought they did a cracking job here. Probably should have been surprised that the Jay White, at least from an in-ring point of view, could work babyface. And I thought, without giving the entire game away, it wasn't a 5-star match. It wasn't a completely balls to the wall, we're gonna take all the headlines type of match. But as a really well-worked opener match with a couple of guys who should be, in my mind, higher on the priority list than maybe they are at times in AEW, especially Jay White. I really enjoyed this as an opener.
Yeah, I thought it was a good start to the show, and I was like exactly the same mindset of thinking that dynamic of like Jay White the babyface, Hangman Page the heel. It just doesn't sit right, and I felt like that was present just in the building when I was watching it though as well. Like when Hangman came out at the start, the commentators were trying to do a job of him getting booed, but I was thinking I can't hear fucking many boos when he came through the through the curtain there, and maybe someone in the building would tell me something different. And even when he got in the ring, it was like very kind of mixed out. It sort of felt 60-40 positive, and even he had to stick his middle finger up to the crowd to get them to turn a little bit, sort of thing. There wasn't that sort of full buy-in there, which wasn't wasn't a great dynamic. I think from a work style as well, like Jay White still just works quite like a lot of what he does is quite heelish still. He works a lot of a lot of that moveset and the way he works still feels very heel like. So again, you're sort of looking at it and thinking, okay, well, if you're a babyface, there's room for that, I think, as a babyface, but maybe those elements of it that I thought, I could just do with toning back a couple of elements there. But in the main, like, yeah, enjoyed it. I thought it was a good story that they built around the knee there. With obviously that came to be the deciding factor in the match at the end of the day. But I think they put the groundwork in like nice and early. Jay White was working his knee very early on, so there was that damage was there before Hangman had sort of blown it when it was a somersault, wasn't it, out of the suplex in the corner or something, where he then buckled on his knee. So that sort of set that up quite well. I think that Hangman still got a lot of really strong offense in as well. Like there was the the DVD on the apron, the powerbomb on the apron, the steps, the dead eye, and things like that. So even in defeat, Hangman still looked sort of very strong for what he was given really in the match to like hit from a work standpoint. So I thought that covered the fact that he got beat as well, to some degree as well. But I don't know. It's still one of them. Just like at the end, I didn't feel like the crowd wanted to boo Hangman, and I just think Jay White is just a better heel. He's just a natural heel, and he can probably do a job here as a face, and he's got plenty in his locker to be able to deliver on that. But you come back to it and think, is it the best use of him, and is it the best use of Hangman? And I'd probably say no. And it's kind of you can almost like have a 7 out of 10 version of both of them, but why wouldn't you want to go and have like a 9 out of 10 version of them playing up to their absolute strengths? And I think that was the difficult part of it with me, that just didn't sit quite right. And plus, I didn't like that poached egg that Jay White spat on Hangman's stomach.
He's constantly wiping his mouth through matches, and Jay White probably needs to do something about that. But like, it is. But like, he's a babyface now, though, so he has to look, prim and proper. And that there were lots I appreciated about Jay White's performance in the match. I did think he kind of worked. I heard the What Culture lads describe him as working the match a bit like Bret Hart. So that's why I went to you first there, Gareth. But there's like a kind of mechanical babyface. I could see that, and there are elements of that were good, because Jay White is one of those. He's a Randy Orton worker type who actually has the matches too, at least in higher regard than I'd say Orton. But he's worked with a lot of great baby faces, and obviously he knows where the babyface should be in certain moments of the match. And I think he plugged little things he's probably learned from being on the other side of it into the match well. But then to your point, Gareth, there were definitely spots like that you mentioned with the knee. There was like a spot where he kept when Hangman was about to go for the buckshot lariat, and he was kind of like too far away, and then he was too close, and it was borderline comical and would be better as a heel. And to that point, like, it felt, I couldn't tell if they called something wrong, but when he ran up to Hangman, instead of him hitting Hangman, which would be the babyface version of the spot, Hangman hits him, and then he bumps, and then he rolls to the apron, and then he grabs the leg, and he does the grapevine with the leg. And it was like, that was a really clever spot, but that was so Weasley and so heel Jay White that he just couldn't help himself but end up back like that, which does land me exactly where you are, Gareth. And like, I've been calling for Jay White to get a decent push in AEW. It's just monkey's paw stuff that like that decent push might be coming in probably his not ideal role as a babyface. Because I would have, if he gets a good push now, then great. I suppose that's good. And if he's a main character on Dynamite going forward, that's good, because he's somebody who should maybe not tippy top level, but certainly upper mid card at minimum level. But it does feel a little bit like, even in the result of this match, I was heavy against it, JP, on the weekend show. Like, I really felt like Hangman Page coming off that swerve like series and coming off that feud and hoping that he's got bigger things to come, which actually I'm not sure he does now going forward. Like, you've got a hierarchy in your company, and I think Hangman Page is main event level. Hangman Page is someone whose losses should come rarely and should mean something when they do. And Jay White is somebody who just, unfortunately, has been booked into a corner. So while, like I said on Weekend Show, JP, I could understand the want to put Jay White over in this spot and go, well, Jay White needs a win. I'm not sure if I would have necessarily done it, you know, with where both of their stock is going into it and where I think both of their natural positions should be further down the line, if that makes sense, as much as I enjoyed the match.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I've probably got a slightly different take. Well, only in the sense, like, I mean, I enjoyed the match. I really like the dynamic between them, between this idea that one of them's a bit of a hothead and the other one is very cool and calculating. And so, therefore, that mixture of personalities could kind of work. It's just in some ways what they needed to do, and this is easier said than done, is you kind of eliminate the heel-face dynamic and you just have them based on their personalities. They're just two very different types of people. I think when I sort of viewed it through that prism, that's how I ended up enjoying this as a match, because I was like, okay, like, it's the idea of just like, you've got this guy who's really cunning, who's just smart, and he's smart about where he needs to be around in the ring, but he's not going to fight valiantly and he's not going to fight fair, and I'm fine with that. I just think in the orthodox world of heel versus face, like, that's more of a shades of grey character, which is something that I often advocated for it. What was really funny is there's one person who's in the chat, in Steph, who was saying like Jay White should get the win,
and one might be around too, so
we were saying Hangman, but it was like she was going, no, Jay needs the win. And so I was shocked when he got the win. The way he got the win as well, I thought was really good. Like, I mean, I'm always an advocate for hitting those kind of surprise finishes. Maybe it's because we did the Randall show, and that we ended up looking at that spot at Mania with Seth Rollins and Orton, and just like that idea of hitting your finisher out of nowhere. Pardon the pun on this, but it was a good finish. I enjoyed this as a match and as an opener. Yeah. Because again, it wasn't like the easy option would have been to do hologram Mortos, pop that into the mix, and just
option, I would say, based on what happens later.
yeah.
Well, at least it should have been earlier, I'd say. Yeah,
should have been on the show at all. And I love Mortos, but that would be probably where I would land with that overall. But I thought this over delivered for what I wanted and what I expected. From this, I want to see more of it. The problem, and we brought this up on the weekend show as well, is that the Jay White face turns, it's unearned. Like, it's just sort of happened, and that's the problem with it. Is where are we going to go over the next few weeks? Is he going to start cutting babyface promos? I mean, what's the?
He tried on Dynamite, it didn't work. It did not work.
Didn't want to, did he?
Yeah.
But as a match and as an opening match for this, I thought it was really good. So I mean, if you could ask me to give a rating for it, I'd go 4 stars.
Yeah, I think I'll go 4. This is one of the matches I rewatched today in prep for this, because it was like one of my very positive memories from watching the pay-per-view, and I almost rated to a 4.25. You know what? I'm not going to be a coward. I'm going to say that, because I did think the work bell to bell was that good. My only question is, like I say, the positioning of both and what's next for Hangman, and really, will they genuinely follow up with, you know, what this should mean? It's, you know, it's not quite Takeshita beating Omega, but it's like, you know, beating Hangman Page, especially after, you know, Hangman Page last big match was in beating Swerve Strickland. That says a lot. Says there's a statement of intent there. Again, question's going to be in the follow-up. How about you, Gareth?
3.75 for me. Like, it was good. Like, enjoyed it for that level. For me, it was like coming back to it and just thinking about, okay, well, what's the follow-on with Hangman Page here? Yeah. If he's taking a loss here, then there's got to be something needs to come out of this. The fact that he's taken a clean loss in this way on a pay-per-view, so that's the intriguing element. Will it just be forgotten about completely, or is there a plan? Is there a substance to this in terms of like feeding into a character change to him or something further down the line?
Continuing on that character change.
But a good way to start the show. Like, definitely getting 2 guys out there who, you know, you turn on, it's Hangman Page, it's Jay White, 2 big names who are going to go out there and have a good match. I always think that's the best way to start a pay-per-view for me. You know, if you give you that kind of like feeling of it, oh, this is something substantial to get your teeth into right away.
Definitely. Well, following up from that, we had up second, and I think the good feeling did continue for me. Mariah May and Willow Nightingale. They only went about 11 minutes or so, I think, this one went. It wasn't there for a long time, but it was there for a good time. I would possibly say JP was the strongest thing that's happened in this Mariah May title run since she won the belt. It's as high as I was in coming out of All In, and as much as I would talk it up as an AEW success story, been pretty cold on a lot of the at least the TV content that's come with her. Was very positive on the idea of Willow going over here and them just pulling that trigger. I feel like there's a world where you could do that, and Mariah May Toni Storm continues on without the belt, but result maybe aside, I thought he did some cracking work here in the time they were allowed, JP, and this was tough spot, second on the card, coming off an opener with a very over Hangman Page in it, and I think the girls did well.
I think they really did, and this was like I would say a pleasant surprise. I think it just says a lot about Willow Nightingale. I think if you think about the match she had at All Out and how good that was against Chris Statlander, who we won't mention, because they just seem to have completely decided to switch things on her. But the idea of her being worked into...
Explain that on Rampage, mate, we're sorted now. Because everyone watched that and everyone understands.
Yeah. Of course. But for this one, I had relatively low expectations. There's always a slight fear factor with Mariah May where you go, okay, at what point is it just not going to work? And this worked. I think the key is... just don't think, well, she worked in Japan for a bit, so we'll put her in there against a load of Joshi wrestlers. No, because people don't give a shit. So, like, why don't you just have her wrestle the people who are the regulars around the place? Because that's clearly the most obvious direction. And I thought, like, the crowd were into this. I mean, I was surprised by sort of like the clean, decisive finish. There was a part of me thinking, whether or not we, and you said this as well on the weekend show, like whether or not we have Toni Storm come back in here as well, were we going to get some sort of shenanigans? And we never did. Like, and I thought, I just came away from it thinking, when Mariah May is in there with the right opponent, she looks good and she manages to work well as that kind of like that heel champion. I mean, I've got limited expectations. Is she putting on 5-star clinics? No. But is she capable of raising her game and getting a crowd to react to her? Absolutely. It helps when you got Willow there. I want to see them run this back because the story for the women's division should be, the common sense one is Willow's chase for the title. And when she wins that title, that it's a really big deal. We might be away for that because, as Will mentions there in the chat as well, you've got to have Toni Storm versus Mariah May in Australia for the show in Brisbane. That's the one that makes sense, simply because the ticket sales, as Will also mentions in the chat, are shit. So that's what you need. But I found myself really enjoying this as a match. I thought, again, competitive. So I know rating wise, I'd go like a nice 3.5 for this, which when you figure what you're following up from and how second on the card matches generally die a death, I think that's as good as you can realistically expect.
How about you, Gareth?
Yeah, I fully enjoyed this as well. I just think it's, I think the overriding feeling for me coming out of this one was just sometimes you've got to give the people what they want, and like, especially on a show where that's ending in darkness as it did. Like, Willow is so over, and like, AEW have just had this in the past where they just haven't pulled the trigger at the right time with people, and I'm like really high on Willow, and I'm just worried that they then go, Willow's penciled in to win it in June 2025 though, or something like that. Once we've got this Toni Storm thing out of the way, by which time she could be as dead as a doornail in terms of crowd reaction or something like that, because big pop for her ear when she was coming out, when she was firing up during this match. After Mariah had her down and was just sort of like bullying her with punches, the crowd were all with her, kind of, like more so than I would say the majority of baby faces on this show. They're right behind, Willow was like totally off the seats here with that one. So I think that was one for me. I was just feeling like sometimes you've got to just go with it. And I mean, I'm not massively high on Mariah May's overall work, or again, same as you, this title run. But what I will give her is she's good at the details, like the little things where she, I think there was a thing earlier in the match. She was like raking Willow's mouth open, and she was just giving that kind of like dastardly look down the camera to everyone at home as she was doing it and things. Just them little things like that just add a bit of like evilness to the character, or a bit of like what a bitch to the character kind of thing, which I think are necessary. And even the fact that she can be a bit more hard hitting, one of the spots I was talking about there is where she has got Willow down, and she's sort of like really bullying her with like punches to the head kind of thing, which you probably wouldn't expect, for like from her in general, wrestling style as well. So I think she sort of hits the mark with those. But overall, I thought it was a really good hard hitting match. I thought the finishing stretch they absolutely nailed, like they did, like really put that through to perfection there. That was really, really smooth. Took the crowd on that journey, and I'd go same as JP there, 3.5 stars for me. Like proper enjoyed this.
Yeah, 3.5 for me as well. Full set rate, really. I won't repeat what you said. I think as far as like protecting Willow to an extent, she'll be fine going forward. She is one of those, like you said, she's kind of like, you can get away with this with her. It's just how long, because you can rely on the next time she challenges for the belt, she'll be just as over again, and people will want her again. That's the enduring nature of this character. But I'm with you. I would like to see that happen a little bit sooner. What you said there about Mariah May had a commitment to the bit as well. She kind of kept that commitment to the bit in the absolutely skippable press conference that came here after the show. Wasn't asked any questions. I wouldn't ask any questions because as good as she is at doing the bit, why would the journalist play along with it? Like it's just like those two things.
In the past, does it?
Oh, honestly, if I still got him, I would not go to one of those things. But I'm on the naughty list, but oh well. But yeah, like I say, I'm surprised there was no Tony Storm appearance, as you said, JP. But I imagine that will be coming on a Dynamite, and there were a lot of returns on this show because you can't do too many. But yeah, there's a big return to follow this. I imagine we'll spend more time on it than the match itself. But next up, we did have Jack Perry versus Katsuyori Shibata. I was going to go to you first, JP, but I don't know, I'll let you continue, Victor, up on Jack Perry on this one. Gareth, I think the world is starting to see what your take is. He comes out and I just go, like again, we'll probably talk more about Danielson's retirement later, but it's fucking offensive to me that Danielson had this short run as AEW World Champion, and we got a Nigel match. Great. What was his other big defense? This fucking bloke, Jack. Like as Jack Perry walked out, I was like, he was in the title match last pay-per-view, and we've all forgotten already because that's how forgettable Jack Perry is as a character. I just think even the biggest Jack Perry boosters are on your team now, Gareth. And yeah, because we didn't mention it on the pre-show, but because Tony Khan remembered on the night that this was supposed to be an Inoki tribute show, forgot Inoki's catchphrase, but he remembered it was an Inoki show. So I guess we have to have Shibata on here, and we have to protect him a little bit in defeat here against Jack Perry. But yeah. I'm not sure it was a great spot for him either, but yeah. Is there a future in Jack Perry genuinely other than this? Like, I think his level might be found out at this point, Gareth, and he's not so great at that either.
No, well, if I can say one positive element to this TNT title run is we talked about the 4 belts feeling like it was a bit of a mishmash and what level are they and things like that. I think we know now for definite the TNT title is a lower mid-card belt there. So the firmly established one has been significantly lower than all the others by leaving it with Jack Perry for this time because he's significantly devalued it from where it was previously. So there you go. That's one positive in his box. But fucking hell, as soon as he walks through there with his shitty fucking joke shop goat mask that he wears, like honestly, like is that it? Does that make you a heel? Does it? Your shitty little mask, and then just like the work and the substance of his work that goes behind it, and he's just like in there between, with Shibata, who, how many years past real Shibata are we now, kind of thing. But even this, you're watching this match and you're just like, God, Shibata's leagues and leagues and leagues better than him. Like it's just unreal. Just like watching, even as he is, like just been, it's like so much on for him, and ultimately. he was just used as a mechanism, wasn't he, in this match? That like to get to something that was ultimately, bigger at one level with Garcia, and then even bigger still in terms of like storyline and star quality with the MJF and Adam Cole stuff that came really. So I think you can see where he sits in the totem pole, and I think I think even within AEW, people have realised, yes, this is where Jack Perry sits now. Imagine losing CM Punk for him.
I mean, you say they're lame, but again, they put him in the world title match. That's another thing that possibly being blamed on Bad Man Gone, Jimmy Jacobs. So we'll see going forward. But yeah, I think it goes both ways though. Like Shibata's, like it's what a nice real life story. Don't think I guess this pay-per-view, because allegedly it's an Oki thing you do, but it should be in like the ROH Pure division, and that'll do for Shibata now. I don't know. Do you have anything positive to say about this match at all, JP?
Yeah, I'm assuming Inoki's grandsons, who were shown in the pre-show, absolutely fucking loved this. So, if for no other reason those two lads liked it, because I fucking didn't. It was a match. My eyes watched it. I was just bored. And like you say, it was just like, well, Jack Perry's just not on his level, but he's no way he's losing. And the finish was fucking shit. Just
yeah,
like
it was, wasn't it?
Screwy finish, and it was just like a load of old bollocks. And I'm not, I've been probably more willing to give him a
especially
bit of
considering
time.
the finish of the main. I hadn't put that together, JP, but like, yeah, that's like road agents speak to each other, lads.
Oh, I don't think they do at all. I don't want them. There's so many of them. They've probably never fucking met half of them, have they? So like, there's so many of the bastards knocking around the place. But it was just like all of this was just a precursor to, I would say, an angle, but a series of angles that appeared afterwards that should have just been waiting for television, frankly. And I watched this, and I've been more willing to give Jack Perry time, but nah. As I'm very fond of saying, there comes a point. Kill Jester, or in this case, kill Goat Jester. Yeah, because it's just not working. And if anything, spend some of the money you've got to get Jack Perry on a reality show where he talks about nothing but AEW when he's doing, I don't know, Survivor, based on the idea he's Luke Perry's son. That would be a better investment and a better marketing policy for AEW to do than actually have him in the ring and as a champion in your company. Like, that would be a better use of time. But
definitely,
yeah,
2 stars for me.
Yeah, 2 stars.
And then more.
Oh God, I'm slightly higher. I went 2.5. I feel bad now.
Why did you love it, Gareth?
Shibata was good.
He's got his role, but again, I'm not sure it's this. But
his role should be in New Japan, but I'm not labouring that point.
And not being a Vince McMahon-esque meme backstage talking into a translator. But anywho, I've made that point enough. We were followed up by one of the first of a few notable angles on the show. Yeah, obviously, first up, we had Jack Perry laying into Shibata and was saved by Daniel Garcia. So it was like, okay, there we go, Daniel Garcia. If he's signed this new deal now that we were all, like I said, Gareth, like Bret Hart in 1995, all waiting on tenterhooks. So 96, wasn't it? All on tenterhooks, waiting to see if he'd signed or not. Definitely a story that was laid out on TV and was worth paying off on a Dynamite. But either way, that the argument, Garcia should stay at AEW because they'll push him finally this time. I was like, cool, Garcia's been remembered. Wasn't by the end of the segment, as MJF very quickly ran out. MJF, who then proceeded to cut a promo, literally stood on the neck of Daniel Garcia. And as I'm borrowing this point from Steph, she talked about it on a stream last night. Remember when it was it was at least implied that MJF had disappeared from TV because of, from what Garcia did to him physically? No, it wasn't. MJF made sure to remind us all. It was because he was off filming a film with Adam Sandler. So Garcia doesn't even get that. And then if you were thinking, oh well, at least there's a bit of heat here, and we'll be back to Garcia and MJF in no time. Out comes Adam Cole, baby, who wanders out, and we're resuming that story, which I think we could all, as much as we've all been critical of AEW storytelling and losing of threads and forgetting outright of some stories recently, story I think we could all just accept being lost. But I suppose at least some nice symmetry that we've been so long since the absolute abject, critical, and commercial bomb that was the MJF and Adam Cole Devil story. And like we're so far along now that MJF's back to being a heel again, and apparently we're cheering Adam Cole, who was last seen on TV being kicked in the bollocks by MJF. Make any sense of this one for us, JP? Because a lot of stuff happened. Yeah, I don't know. Where do we start? MJF's hair, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, he does need hair.
Looked odd, didn't he? Clean shaven too.
Really odd. And I think he had that because he's in Happy Gilmore 2, isn't it? That's the Adam Sandler film that he's doing.
In fairness, that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
I've got time for Happy Gilmore, Mike, as a film as well. This is probably as good as a golf film you're going to see outside of perhaps Tin Cup.
Absolutely.
Or The Legend of Bagger Vance. We'll leave that on the golf film fronts. But for this one, this just made me cross because I did wonder to myself, did Daniel Garcia go, why have I fucking re-signed? Here we go. I'm back in. It's like, yeah, you're going to get a push. You're going to get a chance to go for a title. But you're also simultaneously going to be completely overshadowed and forgotten within the same segment of you challenging in all of this because MJF just took over and did MJF things. And I was there going, okay, you were the face in this storyline with Adam Cole, which was there to just have a push. Sorry, he was there to get a pop from the crowd in terms of Adam Cole coming out. And it's like, it's one of those things that, and this is what a big fault of AEW, it's like, in the moment, you're like, that's great. And then you go, but it doesn't make any sense. Like, what's happened to the rest of the lads he was knocking around with? Are they just all forgotten? I'm assuming Wardlow's still in his dressing gowns and sliders backstage, isn't he? Not taking part in any of this bollocks on here. I mean, one of the things it did is it made me forget about Jack Perry, Katsuyori Shibata. But at the same time, it was just like, well, what's happened here? We've just managed to throw in a whole load of stuff, and it completely, like I say, just overshadowed Daniel Garcia, who was meant to be the person that really just needs to focus on. All that other stuff that happened post Daniel Garcia coming out and challenging Jack Perry, why didn't you leave that for your TV? Which needs moments like that, weirdly, but I'm not a fan of it either, because if we go all the way to the end and the ending angle, it doesn't feel like these characters fit in the same universe as those lads, because they're just kind of like, they're just fucking around, really, for the most part. So it's like the headspace side of it, when you sit back and you look at the show in its totality and you look at this and you go, what the fuck is this here? Why is this on a pay-per-view other than to get that pop?
Like, I don't know, maybe it says something about me, but I was actually half MJF's music hit Gareth, and I was like, actually, I had a positive reaction at first, because I was like, well, we can talk about AEW's, fallen metrics, but a big part of the fallen metrics is probably, at least in this period, we've been missing some stars on TV. We've been missing Swerve. Whatever you think about the output, a lot of the time, we've been missing MJF. And then the content of it was like, yeah, that's why I haven't missed MJF. Did you take any positive out of this, Gareth?
I think the one thing for me the one positive that I took out of it was that Garcia came out after Jungle Boy, didn't he? And I was like, oh yeah, I could just see him having a nice little year-long mid-card run here with the TNT Championship that really established him as this credible wrestling threat or something like that. I was like, envision him being this kind of, not quite a Gunter kind of thing, but like just this idea of Garcia building his stock kind of thing, just by beating everybody, winning all the time, not needing to be in the main event picture, and just, repeatedly winning. And so I was starting to fantasize about that at that point, and then MJF came out, and then Adam Cole came out. It was just a bit like Russian dolls, wasn't it, or something like that? They should have gone the whole hog. Like Miro should have came out next, and then Griff Garrison came out, and then Goldberg came out, and then just kept going, just kept going and going and going till the end of the show. Just give everybody on the roster, Cole Carter or somebody coming out, and just a random mix of people coming out along the way, but. The idea of fucking going back to Adam Cole and MJF, like now, when it's just I almost just feel like the stain of that has managed to just be kind of like washed away to this point, and it kind of, you've gone past that point of, well, they need to tie up that loose end, to just been like, that loose end has been erased kind of thing, and we don't need to worry about it or even think about it because so much has gone on. Now we're in a world of going, as you say there, hang about. He was the heel and he was the face, and we're having to kind of like try and reattach those threads in a completely different way. Just, I don't know if
it feels like it's entirely. It feels like it's nice guy Tony Khan throwing Adam Cole a bone, who didn't look great when he walked out. Maybe there's reasons for that. But like, there's a real life nice story there that Adam Cole, is getting to come back to wrestling again, and maybe, the way this story was initially paid off with the kick in the balls from MJF, like the person who benefits from at least having a match and being done with it is Adam Cole, but there is part of me that just thinks that he should have been made to, real life story aside, suffer with the fucking consequences of this horrendous story, and the both of them, so they're just gone on to different things. But I'm hopeful it's one and done and we move on, but it's the MJF first, so who knows. But there's more angles to come on this pay-per-view, but before we get there, we had that, for me, another big in-ring highlight of the show, as we have for the AEW International title, Will Ospreay, Ricochet, and Konosuke Takeshita, who, I don't know if it's going to be for you, Gareth, but it was definitely for me, and a very, for me, match. This was one that woke me up live on Saturday night. I was very much jumping up and down off the couch with some of the spots they pulled off in this one, some of which came off, some of which maybe didn't quite come off, some of which felt like maybe got, to JP's point, repeated a little bit in the Hologram Immortus match later on, which at a fucking minimum should have been before this, because there was no way a similar style match like that was going to follow this. But yeah, absolutely loved it there. I think, we said on, again, the preview, it felt like, yeah, Ricochet maybe had to raise his game to be up there with these two. I don't know if he necessarily did, but I feel like dropping the flares was a start. Maybe he was listening to Spotlight along with Will Ospreay, and he heard that feedback, because he looked more like his old self. I feel like it helped, just the look in general. But this was just ambitious three-way wrestling, of which there isn't going to be for everybody, Gareth, but it's absolutely for me. Loads of creative spots in this match. Just a first-class three-way match for me. And then there was basically an angle for the last couple of minutes of the match, which maybe knocks it down a bit of a grading. But I'm going to talk about that in a bit. Let's talk the match first. What did you make of this one, Gareth? I thought it was a marked improvement, at least on the singles match of Ospreay Ricochet from Dynamite. And I think the adding Takeshita to the mix is a big part of that. Massively so. I think there's like the two factors there. I think Takeshita and the dynamic that Takeshita brings to a match, like this is one. I think the other one is Ricochet up in his game. It was undoubtedly the best that he's been since he's been in AEW. It's the flares, I'm telling you.
The way he performed. And maybe it is. Maybe they're just holding him back. Maybe there's some
wind resistance or something, maybe it's that.
But I think it was almost like, for me though, I was thinking about it, and it's almost like you had Ricochet at one end of the spectrum, you had Takeshita sort of at another end of the spectrum, and Ospreay was kind of like that blend between the two, kind of, because Ospreay's working style is significantly more advanced than it was way back in the juniors days, when it would be him and Ricochet in terms of his overall moveset and working style and things like that. So it just kind of, it was just that nice kind of piece in the puzzle there between the three of them. And like before the pay-per-view, I was like, oh, I wish we were just getting a singles match here between like Ospreay and Takeshita. I'm now looking forward to more Ospreay and Takeshita like singles stuff, further down the line, hopefully. But I thought this three-way completely delivered, and just like you talk about some of the spots like throughout there, Benno. Obviously, there's so much fucking going on here that, like, God, you could be all here all day, like picking some of this stuff. But right at this quite early on, that where Ricochet went for the Sasuke special, but Takeshita caught him, and then Ospreay came flying with one of his own. I stood up, like, and I was just like, whoa, like that just fucking like caught me. There was a sequence like a bit further on at the midpoint in the match where it was like. And again, given that it's happening at 100 mile an hour as well, it was like the Oz Cutter attempt that was evaded by Takeshita. Then Takeshita missed a lariat, but then he hit one on the second attempt. But Ospreay sort of somersaulted through it, landed the Oz Cutter off the ropes, and then Ricochet just suddenly emerged out of the top corner of your screen, kind of thing, to land on the grounded Ospreay for like a 2.99. the timing, the fucking speed, the accuracy, and everything that was going on with that, just absolutely like phenomenal. And everybody knows I'm not the fucking flippy guy kind of thing when when it comes to matches, but when it's executed to this level and they're doing things that are genuinely innovative and things that they're putting spots together that are thought out as trying to be something different, and then they execute them absolutely perfectly in that moment. Like that's when that gets me up off my seat, and that's when then I get the most enjoyment out of a match like this. So that some people you'd maybe point to and go, yeah, that's not a Gareth kind of match. I think Takeshita though, I think his influence on this match pushed it more into my ballpark really of what I like, because again, just how like hard hitting he is, some of like the big the big power offense and things like that is landing there with just suplexes and some of the lariats and things like that. That fucking cradle tombstone on Ricochet through the table on the outside, that was just a beast, like absolute.
He was dead.
Oh, the fucking execution on that was just perfect with that. And I was buzzing off this match. Proper had me like up. Really enjoyed this.
I'd say that I'd agree. Like Ospreay was fantastic in this one. Takeshita was the star of the match for me, and I agree. I think Ricochet upped his game. To your point, I was going to make that exact point. This reminded me of the type of creative spots like CZW lads would have been doing in the early 2000s, or a Slim J would have attempted, or Special K lads would have attempted, and not fully pulled off. And not everything came off perfectly in this match, There was like a Rana off the top that went a little bit awry, and there was a couple of awkward moments. But for the most part, like, this was first-class athletic wrestlers pulling off first-class stuff. This was fucking professionals. And I think Takeshita, just to single him out for a bit of praise, is a big part of the reason. Like, I hated the finish of the match, JP, unfortunately, to temper all my love of like the rest of the match. What I do like about it though is that maybe we're going with Takeshita finally, because that man is so special. I don't think people understand. Like, there's wrestlers from New Japan who come over to AEW, who fans like us like. And do they really get over it, if we're all honest with ourselves? Do they really feel like proper parts of the program? There are, foreign wrestlers in the women's division. There are non-English speaking wrestlers, up and down the card, or at least not native speaking English wrestlers up and down the card, where there is a bit of a barrier for them getting over on American TV, whether it's their fault, whether it's the way American TV is structured, whether it's the fans, who knows. Takeshita blows through all of that. He's undeniable. He's on that level with Ospreay and Omega and those guys. Like, that's how good he is. And like, that's something extremely special. He feels like someone, keep talking about it, should be a main character in AEW. And my overriding hope, JP, based on the finish of this match is like, well, yeah, it kind of ruined the fun that I think me and Gareth were having up until that point. But if it means a sustained Takeshita push, I'm all for it, because this should have been happening after he beat Kenny Omega. Let's hope it's happening now.
Oh God, please let it happen on here. I mean, I'm kind of with you guys as well, and to the point where you could see that being the finish. It was a thing that we predicted on the weekend show, and it came to pass because it felt like that was like the obvious direction of what they're going to do, and I wasn't mad about that. But in terms of the match, and there was a couple of spots when I rewatched this, I just started laughing, particularly the one where they kind of go for a doomsday device, and then it leads into just a whole series of suplexes and stuff. But
yeah,
I thought that, like you mentioned about the Takeshita influence, it was the little things, it was the little looks, it was when they were on the apron on the outside. He felt like he was the big man glue, like you say, just kind of holding things together. Because he was spectacular, but not. He wasn't going to be doing what they were doing, but he was able. He knew where he should be, and he knew how to kind of take part in it. And even the big kind of like the Rana spot that was slightly botched, they covered for it well enough. Yep. Which, if you've got a match that's this ambitious, I'll give them some leeway, because I'll say, well, at least you're trying stuff. And yeah, it won't be for everyone, this match. If you don't like this type of wrestling, then you'll hate this match. It won't be for you. But for me, it ticked that box of like spectacular kind of three-way. I can see Chris there in the chat saying about John and Way comparing it to the unbreakable three-way from TNA and stuff like that, which I thought like that was kind of like phenomenal. It also didn't have the kind of the finish for this is the thing that ends up taking it down ultimately. But where I came away from it, very similar to you guys, you got to go with Takeshita. I thought, well, I want to see Takeshita versus Okada at Wrestle Dynasty unifying their titles. That would be something that I would love to see, just to kind of get that away. And then I'd put it on Takeshita because he clearly, like, it's also the crowd reactions. The crowd reacted big for him in particular in isolated spots as well. And he lives up to his end of the bargain. And he's just a...
When someone's world class like that, they're undeniable. Yeah. They're just undeniable.
He is proper world class. And, you know, I've said it a few times. It's like, well, if he's not being used there, like a run in New Japan with him as dominant IWGP champion would have been something. But it looks like they are going to be using him at last. But then, are you being used if you're international champion? Because that's the problem when you've got all of these mid-card belts. Ultimately, that's my only other kind of issue with this, is it's fighting over a belt that, personally, I just don't think should exist in the company. I think you have your world and you have your TNT title, and that's fucking it. The rest of the other belts fuck off.
Dream is the Continental Classic is like Eddie Kingston last year. It's like, no, we're putting all the belts in. TNT belt's going in the pot. This belt's going in the pot. International title's going in the pot. Continental title's going in the pot. And let's just go. But it's probably wishful thinking. So while the trinket is there, I'm glad it's on Takeshita. And I think Ospreay's outgrown it as well. You know, I think I'll do a rematch, absolutely. I'll love a rematch, whether it's a three-way rematch or another one-on-one with Ospreay and Takeshita. But going forward, I'd like to see Ospreay, further up.
If it frees Ospreay to go into ultimately after wherever this feud with Carl Fletcher goes, which is, let's face it, is a step down, regardless of any of the kind of good
He'll
stuff.
see it as wanting to bring Kyle up, won't he?
Yeah.
That'll be the idea.
And I can kind of see it from his personal perspective that he would want that. I just think what I would want is him in that top 6 main eventers who are all gunning for the world title. And there's that elite mix of people who are going for that, who are going for like Moxley and stuff like that. That would be where I would want to see him from here on out. And it just takes him out of that international title championship. Like kind
of. So knowing that we have to stop and think, innit? It's like, what's that one called? I have to do it every time. I have to remind myself.
Because there's an international and a continental, and clearly intercontinental. It's annoying, combination of the two, isn't it?
But I mean, any thoughts on the angle, Gareth? Carl Fletcher's possibilities there? I'm not committed either way. I think everyone can see the potential in Carl Fletcher, whether he, whether this is the feud that brings it out of him or not, I don't know. I think didn't Melt to give them a 5-star match on Dynamite this year already. That's how many 5-star matches Ospreay's had that we're starting to forget them. But I'm open-minded to Carl Fletcher having especially again, in light of, like JP said earlier, obviously the Australia card coming up next year. It's going to be, they're going to want him front and center on those posters, and they're going to want to get him over. So I'm at least open to it, even if, the Don Callis verse stuff wasn't necessary for me. And that fucking screwdriver. It gets more story capital letters than anything fucking Roman Reigns and his. It's AEW Zula Fowler. I think I saw somebody say today. I completely agree with that. Like, that's what it is.
I think Carl Fletcher's one of those who you sometimes talk about people who they give him little snippets of opportunity on TV, and do they grab them kind of, and do they actually jump out of the screen as doing more with their amount of TV time, or do they waste that TV time? I think Carl Fletcher's someone who's probably came out over the last few months as coming out and feeling a bit more kind of, and definitely feels like he's upped his stock with the TV time that he's had there, and given that, by nature, it's going to keep Ospreay embroiled with Takeshita here, through the Callis stuff. I'm desperate to see more Ospreay versus Takeshita. If Kyle Fletcher's then kind of a spoke in that wheel as well that goes along with it, I think it's fine, because again, like you say, Ospreay will be really giving, and he's to help kind of elevate Fletcher. But plus, the ultimate focus has got to be on getting Ospreay to that world title picture, and you want to hold him. You want him to be doing something substantial that holds the place until Darby Allin Moxley stuff's out of the way or whatever kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he's not just bleeding into that. Into that. This is the sort of thing that AEW should be doing that they've maybe been guilty of not doing in the past, is finding a direction for those multiple different parts that they've got to put them in a holding place that doesn't feel like a holding place, something that feels like it's got a bit of substance to it. And I think this is something that, you know, that they'll have good matches together. Like I say, if it bleeds into the Takeshita stuff, the end result might be that you then elevate Carl Fletcher as well beyond that, and then you've got Ospreay waiting in the wind for the world title stuff, like further down the line as well. So it's one of these. In theory, it feels like win-win-win. Like from my point of view, in execution, we shall see.
Well, speaking of execution and speaking of angles, we followed this up with another angle. Again, I kind of like a pay-per-view having a couple of angles sprinkled in. Maybe not when it's a pay-per-view this long, but I also question the wisdom of, you know, doing these angles in front of a tenth of the audience that could potentially see it on a worldwide television. And it feels like maybe, at least in this instance, AEW saw that, as we had the Swerve Strickland angle with MVP and Shelton Benjamin. No Bobby Lashley turning up here. I guess we are saving that. Felt very Smackdown pilled, and that we'll get to that in 3 weeks. It's you know, Roman Reigns whispering in somebody's ear, and then the week after somebody whispers in Roman Reigns' ear, and the week after that somebody's got the Ulafala. Oh God, we're doing that again. It's one of those types of stories I think we're going to build to it. I think I joke, but there's nothing wrong with that. I think if you do, you know, a Swerve and Shelton Benjamin match, which I'm not necessarily personally into that, and you know, I just feel like I've been watching a different Shelton Benjamin all my life than some see from the mid 2000s. But I think you can do that match, and it can be a bridge to eventually Lashley coming out, and we're filling weeks of TV, aren't we? Up until presumably Swerve and Lashley have a match at the next pay-per-view. So that's the positive of it, and I do think the performances here were great. Swerve, as always, carries himself like a star, talks like a star. Very much, you know, I've got a big soft spot for Prince Nana. I enjoyed their little back and forths. Maybe went a little bit far with what did Swerve accuse Nana of doing, selling drugs to teenagers in car parks. I mean, Nana's not my first suspect when it comes to stuff like that. There's other people from the ROH locker room in the mid 2000s I would probably have gone with first, but okay. But I liked it. It was kind of nice, the little you know, siding back with Prince Nana and turning down MVP and Shelton Benjamin. And yeah, thought and MVP was very good on the mic again, JP, in this. Like most things in the Swerve verse, where you can tell he's on top of all of it and he's on top of the detail. I think this will be a good little week-to-week story going forwards, and I didn't mind this at all.
I didn't mind this, no. I was like, and also the part of the reason I was sort of fine with this is effectively it's like a homecoming, and he is a major character and was presented as a major character there. The fact we're going to have to we're going to get to Lashley through a match with Shelton Benjamin doesn't necessarily fill me full of excitement. But what I did enjoy was it's just his delivery on the mic, and it's just the levels of confidence that he kind of is showing here, and the way that, like, you know, you didn't think he was going to turn on Nana, but all of the things he said were like all of the right things. It was like, you know, yeah, I've had these downs. However, would I have got to that point without you? And we're family, better or worse. And you just think, yeah, that's not a dynamic that anyone is interested in seeing broken up. There's no reason to do that. So we're not going to do that. And I did love MVP bringing up the Wrestlers documentary that our friend Damon Abram did for Vice TV when it focused on MVP, and that was in Defy. When he was there, and it showed, you know, some of the match he had with Swerve Strickland, and I was like, that's really cool. Like, I thought all of that stuff in the main, I thought that was like, it was well delivered. It didn't go too OTT. It's just the problem is that Shelton Benjamin as the backup does not have that star quality that you would want, like, in there.
All
you
the
know,
matches, but don't get me started.
Yeah, all the matches, and like, and if you don't believe me, go and watch some of his Global Force run. Because
ROH later run, PCW run, Gareth, New Japan run, no, whatever. People want to kid themselves, but fine. But yeah, I'm with you. It's funny.
In fairness, he jumped onto a ladder when he was good at that.
Yeah,
then I'm sure if I have a go at that enough times, is that enough to justify hundreds of thousands of dollars? I'm not quite sure.
It was half of Matty's Randy Orton mixtape, wasn't it? Just gifs, So at least there's that. But yeah, I loved all the performances here. I can't help but love Nana. It's mad. Like, this is one for the ROH sickos, but like, you talk about like all that lore and stuff like that. Like Prince Nana being like this babyface mascot, like he's more like J-Train Julius Smokes, who used to be in Homicide's corner, than he is classic Prince Nana, but it just works so well. And I was never in any doubt that dynamic was going to change. But yeah, I've liked this so far. I don't mind Shelton Benjamin as like a stepping stone. I get it. You want to take if you're going to bring this act in, you're going to bring in Lashley in, and we've been mixed on whether that's a good idea or not. There's something to be said for taking it. This is a stable you saw on that channel. Here they are now. I just hope Shelton Benjamin's more of a placeholder for, okay, that spot goes to Hobbs, who, it's been rumoured is going to be involved here, or somebody else, with a little bit more to offer going forwards. But
EJ and Duca will end up in that as well.
That's been teased too, yeah. Some boxers, so definitely some people there you could go with, Gareth. But any other takes on this?
I think like the main one for me is the fact that Lashley wasn't there, and I was like, whoa, is this a bit of restraint from Tony Khan here? Like, he doesn't feel like the need, like he's gone down the shops and bought a load of new toys and he's got to show them off to everybody kind of in the one evening, because like in the past he's done the MJF thing and then he's done the Adam Cole thing, and he's obviously the Garcia thing before. Then he'd have been bringing out Lashley here, it's almost like he can't hold back, and it's like, no, yeah, let things breathe, kind of thing. Let this story doesn't, this 5 weeks of story doesn't need to happen on one night on a pay-per-view, kind of, where everything comes in there and then. Like, maybe there's a few lessons that have been learned. Maybe I'm just kidding myself once again due to something positive happening on a pay-per-view. But I thought that was something that was a real positive of this, that it didn't need that, and it's something that's in the back pocket there to like extend this out further down the line. And I just have to say, on the mic, like, Swerve is so much better for me. Like, I know he's I used to say that I just never saw that like main event quality with him, and a big part of that was on the mic. I never thought he came across like good, like from getting from a charisma point of view and things. He never felt like he was natural, and like the words coming out of his mouth never felt like him and things like that. Whereas now I 100% do as here. He just feels like that run with the belt feels like it's given him the confidence in his own skin or something like that, to be like, no, do you know what? No, I can be a top guy here. Like, maybe he didn't quite believe it himself previously or something like that, and like now he does, and he sort of exudes that self-confidence a bit more than he's ever done, really. And that's half the bottle, isn't it? To be a star is to fucking believe it yourself and carry yourself like one, and he's certainly doing it.
Should be studied. It really should. His rise, and we're going to look back on it one day and go, bloody hell. It's like looking back at like The Rock, or dare I say it, as much as we hate on this podcast a lot of the time, Triple H and the changes they made to their characters to become main event guys. And like, you can see it in like the change in presentation and the change the way they talk, the way they work, and we've seen that with them, absolutely. So yeah, I'm glad he's back, because he's been a big missing part of the puzzle during these last few weeks of Pretty Dire Dynamite. So yeah, excited to see what comes next. Episodic storytelling, who knew? It can work. We don't have to just do that on Fox, not Fox anymore, is it? USA and Netflix. But anyway, from there we go to speaking of television wrestling, the 2 out of 3 falls match between Hologram and Beast Mortos. And yeah, as we've alluded to, I think I know where you're going to go, JP, because I feel the same way. I wouldn't go as far as I don't think this should be on the show, but I do think it should definitely have been earlier in the show, and I don't think a 2 out of 3 falls match was earned for just that Gen Pop AEW audience who watch Dynamite every week. Who's Hologram? Like, the Beast Mortos, I just see him lose every week. Am I really, at this late point in the night, gonna watch 3 falls worth of action with these two? And I was kind of bullish on, well, Beast Mortos is so good. I'm kind of mixed on Hologram, the former Aramis, isn't it? But like, Beast Mortos is like undeniable that he'll get this crowd, and I think they did, but it was way more of an uphill battle than it needed to be this one for me. And I think a lot of that comes with the placement in the card, and doing a lot of similar back and forths that were in the Takeshita Ospreay Ricochet match, done at a much higher level for me. Yeah, bit of a miss for me on one where I thought this came out second. I almost would have thought it would be a nice little warm up for the crowd, and almost unmissable in the end. It was kind of outwore its welcome, I'd say, a bit for me, GP.
Oh, I think it did. And if you were going to have, my argument would be that that you wouldn't have this on here. The reason for its existence appears to be we've signed a deal with Fox Sports Mexico, and CMLL do 2 out of 3 Falls matches. So why don't we do one? Because it's apparently, is it like Hispanic History Month or something along those lines that they kept on plugging? And it was like, okay, does that mean I need to sit through 16 minutes of this? If this was the one match that was on the pre-show, I'd have been fine with this, because that's where it should have been. I think I'm kind of done with Hologram. He's not spectacular enough to feel like, oh, I'm getting big Glacier vibes, basically, where it's just like, yeah, we've done this. The novelty has gone. You've had this idea in your head about a luchador called Hologram since you were a child, so let's go with it. Nah, bollocks. That's not a good enough reason. If everything's built on fucking childhood dreams, then, why not just populate the show with cowboys and princesses in that case? Because that would make as much sense. This was, because it was like 16 minutes, and it didn't need to be 16 minutes. And it coming, like you say, where you see a lot of the other stuff being done so much better to a much higher degree in the 3-way earlier on, this didn't really stand a fighting chance. And I think it's at this point that the crowd started to tire. I think this is the stage where you're like, if you're doing a 3-hour show, like, you should be basically looking to hit into the home stretch with your last couple of like big matches. Instead, I think it's the realization of, oh Christ, we're halfway through the show at this point with this match, and we were like, this was like the halfway point of the show, and it was just, I didn't care. It sounds boring. Like I said before, I don't get Hologram. I don't think what is he meant to be other than Lucha Glacier?
How about you, Gareth? As a Collision sicko, can you defend it for us? You love a bit of Collision, mate.
I don't know. I almost feel like you were more down on this than I was.
I think generally people are quite positive on it, to be fair. I think we're maybe outliers.
I don't think it's bad, but I was just not interested.
Yeah. I think it's that. A lot of the things JP said there as the reasons for it being on the card felt a bit like ham-fisted. The Mexican TV deal and things, the fact that it'd been best 2 out of 3 just because that's what they do in Mexico, kind of thing. Just felt like like randomly thrown into the mix there. And they almost treat it almost feels like they treat Hologram like he's like Rey Mysterio in 1997 or something like that, and he's some guy who's doing some things that are like mind blowing when you're just like, actually, like, Dante Martin just does that stuff, kind of, and you know what I mean. Like, there's a million lads on the roster, kind of thing, who can do pretty much everything, everything he does. So it just seems a bit odd and out of place, kind of thing. The level he's got built, the level of portion, things like that he seems to have around him. I did enjoy some of the stuff in there. Like, I loved that first fall to the Hologram got. Like, thought it was a really good spot there, where Mortis went for the press slam off the top rope, and then Hologram countered the TRS, then into that crucifix bomb. I thought that was like a cool spot, like, and into the fall. And I thought the second fall with Mortos getting that with the almost that torture rack shift into the backbreaker, and then the power bomb onto the knee, and then the discus lariat. That was popping for that. The delivery of that, and then for them to try repeat them spots a bit further down the line in the match. Like, I enjoyed them as well. Did it need to be on the card? Absolutely not. Did it feel like something that was, a Dynamite or a Collision match? Like, absolutely. But I've gone like 3.25 on it for me. Like, I enjoyed it enough that like, I didn't, I couldn't turn around and say I hated the match, but it was just the fact that it was there and its necessity. That was the problem, really.
I'm all right with it being on the card, but we said earlier about the pre-show, if you were doing one match, this would be a great one match to show off what we can see on Collision every week, and this great, expose, the chemistry these two clearly do have in a lot of ways, to a bit of a, well, maybe not wider audience, but audience that might not have seen them. That would be the positive there. But yeah, like I say, not necessarily even faulting the guys in the match. I'll be honest, I was tired at this point of the night, and a lot of wrestling had come before it, and some similar wrestling had come before it, and they had an uphill battle with the crowd. So quite low on this really for the work they did. I don't know if I go more than 3 on this one, maybe 3.25 at a push, which I know there's people who are much higher than that, who Simon in the chat says he very much enjoyed it, and I think that's probably representative of a lot of people. But with Adam, you go much higher than that?
3.25. I think that's the universal rating for this. It is better than a 3-star match, just simply because of some of the stuff they're trying to do. But I wasn't invested in any way, and I want all I do is I want Mortos to win, and I know he's not going to win because they're going all in on this hologram character. But where does it go? And Chris mentions there in the plat. As a Freudian. Chris mentions there in the chat that you've had Phoenix. If you're going to do a 2 out of 3 falls match and you want Mortis to go in there against someone who's going to get much bigger reactions, you could have done this with Phoenix. This would be the holograms getting the push that Phoenix should have gotten and would have gotten immediately over and would immediately have been credible if he'd been then, say, challenging Takeshita for the international title as a result of kind of going on a long run. I'd have been I could see myself getting well up for that. Hologram doing it, I'm just going to I hope Takeshita just beats the ever-loving shit out of him. And he'll be jobbing in 6 months. It'll just be a bloke who loses.
I think Phoenix had better pushes than this. They were just they never really lasted, did they? They were like most on the roster, especially as singles pushes. Obviously, his better pushes came as a tag. But yeah, I don't think we're seeing him on TV anytime soon. But there we go. 3.25. That's what they're getting. So yeah, from there into again, as Steph kind of says, knowing there's a lot more coming in the show. Darby Allin and Brody King come up next, and I'm going to talk the overwhelming positive for me first in this match, in that these two, they've just got there's wrestlers who've just got chemistry, and these two have got so much chemistry, and a lot of that chemistry is just, Brody King's up for whatever mad shit Darby is pitching, and most of it comes at the expense of Darby's body rather than Brody's, although he took one very big gnarly bump in this one, but the creativity with these two, the spots around the steps on the outside, I was mesmerised by it. They go back and forth, and the fucking wealth of ideas that clearly Darby Allin has in his head. And when he's in there with the right, opponent like Brody King, a big bruiser who's, like I say, up for it, you get magic. And I think in isolation, there's going to be DVD-R type comps of just the work these two did together. There's going to be a mixtape on this one day where it's going to be my God, one of the great underrated feuds in wrestling we got in the 2020s was Brody King and Darby Allin, because when they get in there together, it really is magic. The negative for me is I wish, again, earned is kind of the word of this podcast, wish it was earned a little bit more, rather than just, it was like I was saying in the build to this, it felt like a reheated meal. It was well, we're changing, and presumably they did change plans. I think we can probably all say that now with Moxley beating Bryan in the main event, but Darby's not going for the title anymore, so what can he do? Oh, he's got this mate in real life, Brody King, who's got this chemistry. We'll go to that, and then we'll put them on a Dynamite the week before, and they'll do their best, even though neither of them are natural talkers. The sellers on the story behind it, and Darby's gonna have a rock in his hand. I'll probably leave that bit a bit behind, but you know what I mean. It all just felt a little bit unearned, is the word. And this is one of those matches, in this part of the card, where I'm high on it plenty, but there's going to be people even higher on this who aren't necessarily going to agree with that critique coming into the show. But I would just ask you, coming out of the show in 3 weeks, to tell me where Brody King is, because I was supposed to believe that Brody King was an important opponent for Darby Allin, worthy of a spot on this card. And with how good Brody King is for a shoot, I believe that. But in story was the work done, and I bet you in 3 weeks we're going to be looking at a Brody King who might have had a fleeting Collision appearance, or he's been on Rampage again, and he never gets put in a spot like this again, because it was pulled out of Tony Khan's arse, and there is no consistent push coming for Brody King. I'd love to be wrong. I'd love for this match to mean as much as they tried to pretend it meant in the week build up it got. But yeah, that's the negative. Positive is, very, very enjoyable match. Don't know if you agree or disagree, Gareth.
I absolutely fucking loved this. I thought it was brilliant, but just on the point, totally in agreement, of the non-earned nature of it, and it just sort of feeling like some patched up match that happened on the card. And I think that's where like Brody King's probably one of the biggest people who like has been let down probably over the last 12 months, because in that Continental Classic, he was great and he got over the crowd with it in that tournament. He was getting great crowd reactions in that. And then what have they done with it? Like to deliver for him personally on the back of that? Fuck all. Like, he may have been injured in that time, I don't know, but for 10 months he's basically feels like he's done piss all to me, apart from just get thrown into the odd thing here and there. Whereas I felt like he came out of that tournament as like one of the guys whose stock was really, really high, and somebody who, there's a fresh face there that you can kind of like throw into the mix. Okay, he doesn't need to be a world champion. Like, he doesn't need to be a champion even of any kind, but he's that big, reliable, impactful person who's going to be doing cool stuff on TV, killing lower mid-carders, putting maybe some people over at the top end that you want to like kick on to the next level and things like that. Is almost absolutely perfect for that type of thing that he's, he can probably maintain like a lot of value to some degree. And I felt like this match was almost like the prime example of that, because I mean, this match structure felt like perfect to me. Like, Brody absolutely killing him early on, leaving that opportunity for Darby to kind of like hit some desperation, like high octane offense to kind of get in the mix again, but then going back to killing him, and then Darby's sort of resilience and do or die attitude like paying off with the big spot at the end to get the win. So Darby gets the W. Darby looks like that's a big win, like notch on his belt, like against the bigger guy who's battered him, like, big spots that are memorable. And Brody King came out of it as well feeling like, oh yeah, he's had that opportunity on the pay-per-view to work in a match with Darby Allin that's again kind of like elevated him. So it just felt, it was one of those scenarios where it felt very much like win-win for me. But I mean, the match itself, some of these fucking spots, like just
unreal.
Class. I mean, right from the start, where Brody just fucked Darby right over the top rope, and Darby took that neck bump on the apron. I was just like, what are you doing? It's the first minute of the match, and you're just taking some insane bump before you've even got started, sort of thing. Like, just totally setting the tone with that. That spot where Brody put the steps on Darby's guts and then walked up the steps and then stomped. That was an innovative, cool spot, kind of, again, just really.
We can all imagine what that feels like. It's one of those weird ones, like, it's like stepping on drawing pins. We all know what that feels like. You can imagine that, can't you? Like,
so, that just, as a visual, just stood out so much. And then, like, the whole thing there of, like, where, Brody took him to the corner, looking to suplex him on the steps on the outside, Darby headbutting free, shoving Brody on them, and then landing that coffin drop on Brody on the steps. And Excalibur's commentary just made that for her as well, where he was just like, Darby Allin, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, kind of like, it was an absolutely fantastic piece of commentary that just went along with it. Absolutely fucking great. Like, 4.25 stars for me. I thoroughly enjoyed this. But
just one really quick. I mean, I would in the main agree. The thing I liked about this is it had real pace. It's like 12 minutes long. There's no fucking around in this as well, as it shouldn't have done, because there was a real. I thought I'm going to end up flagging at this stage. I thought this is going to go long because it's Darby's hometown. It didn't, and it didn't need to. So it's like an idea of actually you don't need to extend for this. But it just made me think with Brody King, and I forget the fact he was Ring of Honor World Champion for a while as well. But there is so much unfulfilled potential. The problem is it's the stable he's in, and primarily one of the people he's with. Because could he be in a successful tag team? Yes. Could he be, in theory, in a successful trios? Yes. It's just that one of them is a fucking Mardy cunt. I mean, there's no other way of saying it. That's what he is. He's just always got a strop on. And because of that, you can't do anything with him. And he's just tied in with him at this stage. So seeing him out of that was really good. And, I think I advocated Brody King joining. Sorry.
Visibly out of it as well, Jake, because he had his
camouflage.
He was getting the badge in on his Stone Island camo there, wasn't he? as opposed to having his goth gear on, sort of thing as well. So again, like, when I saw that, I was like, oh, if there's a visual distinction made there, is that something that then now is, or is that just going to be forgotten about and he's going to be have his goth gear back on?
That's what I'm hoping for, that it's something like that, because again, my biggest issue with the build to the matches. Like, you know, if there was any planning going on in this company, which there isn't, you know, Brody King would have been on TV every week squashing jobbers to get us to this point. And if he's not, let's use it as a starting point for the next time you want to have him be the, you know, the final boss that somebody beats on the way to something else. He's built up a little bit more to be in that spot rather than relying on, you know, headcanon. That I'm sure Tony Khan can explain to you about why this is such a, you know, there's so much story involved here. It hasn't really taken place on screen. So, yeah, let's hope there's more come on from Brody. Because, yeah, I'm with you, Gareth. I really love this one. Same as you. The innovation on all the spots, the brutality of it, the hard-hitting nature of it. And it felt like an earned win by the end of it. So, yeah, great stuff. 3.75 for me, maybe is probably about right. But, yeah, that's what I'll go with.
3.75 for me as well.
Oh, I am the high man.
No.
4.25, well clear.
Batty calls us back. We will move on. But, yeah, let's move on from there into a match that's going to be... I'll have to go to you first, JP, near and dear to your heart as Collision rolled on. And again, Collision has some good moments, like it just had. As the Young Bucks defended their AEW Tag Team Championships against, again, that word, and that well-built tag team that definitely wasn't jobbing to the fake Blackpool Combat Club 3 weeks ago. Private Party of Isaiah Cassidy and Mark Quinn. I'll just say briefly for me, and then I'll let you get into the detail. I think the work was pretty good in this, but the uphill battle was making people care because of, you know, where Private Party are in the world, and just in general. Maybe that's a me thing and maybe a you thing, JP. I find it very hard to care about the Young Bucks at this point. So they did their best, and if anything, I was pleasantly surprised that they got the crowd on board as much as they did. But it's your take I'm looking forward to here, JP. What did you make of it? Young Bucks and Private Party at this late stage in the night/afternoon for you.
I mean, would it surprise you to say that I didn't really enjoy this, but I never was going to. I had no intention of enjoying it. It was like I went into this predisposed to dislike it, because in many things it summarised a lot of things I don't like about the tag division. Cold champions didn't help as well by the way they were wearing the same kit. Could they not do a like football thing where they're basically wearing very different clothes as well? They just look like four lads in like multicoloured but mainly blue kind of like outfits, because they were wearing very, very similar clobber. You've got cold challengers. I never need to see managers scouting talent storylines for a very fucking long time, because didn't they have like a couple of them at ringside for this? Or they had Top Flight there watching.
Top Flight there, yeah. It was all the geeks.
Yeah, for that. And you had Stokely Hathaway, because he's there for reasons in terms of a bloke who doesn't need to be there as well. And the part of the problem I find is that Private Party, like, and while the crowd and a certain section of the crowd were willing them to be kind of over, and to a degree they were at the end, that won't last. That'll be gone by Wednesday. So, like, I'd have no confidence of that. Yeah, on the night they gave them the nice, well, you tried really hard, gave them a bit of a round of applause, but just they shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be there at all. Like, they're a TNA tag team at best. They should be feuding with Ace Austin and Chris Bay. That is the level that Private Party
I'll do a swap.
are at.
Get them over here.
They're going to be involved in manager bollocks in the next like few months, aren't they? For this, I didn't like it. Actually, it's even I'm not predisposed to like it. I can appreciate that there was some decent work in this. It's just that I find Private Party, they're not spectacular enough to really stand out, and they're not well grounded enough to be a kind of solid tag team. So they're in this kind of netherworld, really. They're not Top Flight, who on their day can be really spectacular. But they're certainly not fucking like, say, FTR. They're just a team with no discernible kind of identity about them. So
when was the last time they had a performance like this? It was against the Young Bucks 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're going to disagree, Gareth, but I maybe lean towards what you're saying, JP, and that, like, maybe that's the giveaway, that, like, it's because they were in there with, you know, as much as we can be negative on the Young Bucks, you know, pulled them up a level like they did the last time. And is it really worth the experiment? I suppose, to put it to you, Gareth, to get into your take on it, like, even if I think that, I still think if the people booking AEW believe in Private Party to put him in this spot, and believe them enough that apparently there was conversation that they could even beat the Young Bucks, which the Young Bucks responded to on Twitter. If you believe that, okay, follow up. You know, we say that all the time. It might not be who I choose, but if you choose someone, choose them and go with them. I'd be interested to see it from an experiment view. I'd be doubtful on whether it would work. But yeah, probably should follow up with this if it was a plan. Otherwise, it's another one of those unearned matches that you know, with the when time moves on, it's going to be like, fucking hell, was that really on the pay-per-view? But I don't know. Maybe you're higher on the match than we are.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I didn't hate the match. Like, I thought it was fine. Like, as a overall, I went into it probably with a similar mindset of JP. I've just been like, oh, this kind of thing, and just like expecting that I wasn't gonna like enjoy it. And probably for the first half of the match, I felt a bit like that. I felt like, oh, the Young Bucks are just phoning it in here, kind of. There's you know, they just seem a bit energyless. Private Party bringing nothing to the table. But I think the sort of, as the match went on, they sort of started to tell a little bit of a story with Private Party countering like a lot of the big sort of move set of the Young Bucks, and then Private Party hit some of the hit a couple of Young Bucks moves, you know. Then I think they got to the point where I think a certain section of the crowd started to believe that Private Party might actually win. Kind of, there was an EVP trigger, and then Isaiah kicked out, and there was a huge pop for that. Like, I think just as things were getting close there towards the end, and where like Isaiah evaded a second EVP trigger and he rolled Matt up for like a 2.99, and again the crowd fucking really bit on that one. So I think just as a bit of work to get absolutely cold as ice Private Party to the point where a decent chunk of the crowd were biting on the fact that they were maybe going to beat the Bucks and win the belts. You've got to credit them for the work, I think, to you know, achieve what they did with that. But I mean, overall, it was, you know, it was a pretty run of the mill, you know, match in terms of what was on there. There was nothing in there that was particularly innovative. You know, the Bucks were working to a certain level with that. I think probably to come back to Benno's point, for me, it's the idea that like Private Party's stock when they walked up the ramp was higher than the stock when they walked down the ramp to start the match, like at the end of this match. So yet again, how many times have we said this over the course of this evening? It's what happens next sort of thing. And quite easily, Private Party could just end up fucking losing to the Outrunners or something next week on Rampage or something, and never to be heard of again for two months. And then you're like, well, you know, what on earth was this going with it? But within the time that they had, I thought they achieved a decent, you know, something decent overall from a crowd point of view, because they definitely got more into it than I expected they were gonna.
3.25.
Same, 3.25.
Yeah, 3.25 for me. And I think I saw a lot of talk where it was like, you know, the Young Bucks did it again. They managed to pull something out of these. Hasn't it? They did, but not to the level the Young Bucks of 5 years ago would have, you know, like another great Young Bucks banger. Yeah, with a ceiling of 3.5 stars, you know. Let's adjust for where they are at this point. But yeah, the follow-up is probably going to be key there. But yeah, I don't think there's much more to say on that. Following from there, this card continued, the match that snuck up on absolutely fucking everybody, especially watching this one live. Mark Briscoe defending the ROH title against Chris Jericho. Like, this was what we got. This was again Monkey's Paw stuff. Jericho not being on the last pay-per-view meant he got the second from top placement here. And in fairness, I'm not often fair when it comes to Jericho, and I will continue to not be fair. It was pretty good. I think I'm gonna just be where my I don't know. I'm gonna be biased. I don't mind being biased in this case and say it was all Mark Briscoe, and what a lovable baby face you're gonna get behind. And there was an emotional pull in this match that I think came from very much his end, but I've got to give it to them in the way that maybe the Young Bucks and Private Party and their crowd response is, you know, wasn't 100% crowd response, but it was a decent one by the end of it. The crowd were largely into this one, and it was the work that they did there. It was a veteran in Jericho knowing what to do in this spot in the card, even if it's a spot in the card I wouldn't have had him in. and it was Mark Briscoe being kind of undeniable as that very likable babyface. Again, would have had it elsewhere, would have had it on an ROH pay-per-view, would have had it on Collision, wouldn't have had it on the pay-per-view, but once they hit the ring, Gareth, I did think they did a better job than I had marked down for them, especially at this very, very late point in the night.
I'm pleased you said that, and then when you said that about Jericho as well, because I was like sort of like trepidatiously thinking there, like, oh, I'm going to be coming on here and giving Jericho a bit of credit here, because you know there's not a single part of me that wanted to see him on this pay-per-view, but I thought he just seemed on it to me in that match. He seemed up for it. I think the style of opponent that Mark Briscoe is probably fits with where Jericho is in his career now, and for that kind of a bit wilder match that you're able to have. And I think, to be fair to him as well, like I think he put the effort in to make Mark look good here as well. You know, like I think he gave him a lot. He sold for him. He sold for him well, which, you know, again, obviously you get like a lot of negatives around Jericho and things like that, but you can tell that he wanted to work with him like on that evening. And like you say, I think the crowd, you know, really bought into this. You know, there's a couple, you know, obviously the stuff around like the Jay Driller was just obviously like connected on an emotional level with the crowd, and in terms of, you know, the reaction they got for that. And then, you know, when you know Jericho had hit his one and he'd given it that smarmy look down the camera as he went for the pin and things, but then Briscoe kicking out at 2, like that excellent pop, like excellent timing of where that happened in the match and things like that for the live crowd as well. I thought that worked really, really well. But this far exceeded my expectations of what this match was going to be. Shouldn't surprise me, because Mark Briscoe entertains me every single time I see him on the screen. No matter what he's doing, he's a wrestler kind of thing. He just pulls it out on whatever he does. He just jumps through that screen, whether it's the work or whether it's the promo stuff and things like that. But, you know, pleasantly surprised to see Jericho not stink the place up, and, you know, not actually just come away from this just wanting Jericho to be gone forever. Still want him to be gone forever, but like, you know, nice to actually have, you know, some element of positivity around it.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably wouldn't be as hyped because I can't get beyond the fact that this match shouldn't have been on the card. I think a lot of it is really, for me, it's the credit for like Mark Briscoe, and he didn't completely shit the bed. But that's a low bar that we're doing for a show that's predominantly built on work rate primarily, and all AEW shows are built on work rate primarily. You know, I'd say 3 stars for me, which in, you know, for Jericho in 2024 is like, feels like it's kind of like high praise. But I'm wondering, is it because I like Mark Briscoe, and, you know, I'm kind of in, you know, but it's just the idea of this as a Collision main event. I know we're going to use this phrase a lot, but it really is. It's like,
it's what this last hour of the show felt like.
Absolutely, this is where it should have been. If this was
a good little episode of Collision, a high level episode of Collision,
but a high level episode of Collision is what like an hour of this pay per view is. And if it had gone on there, put a couple of Outrunners promos in there, a Queen Aminata squash, and you're kind of done and dusted, aren't you?
Did get a promo,
but it wasn't the worst. And I think there is. It's just then. But what is Ring of Honor like at this stage? You don't need to put like Ring of Honor belts onto a pay per view as well. I mean, that's where my mind
weird, isn't it?
Goes.
It's the motivation behind doing this match, because we were just like, well, the motivation is clearly Jericho's going to beat Mark Briscoe here, and of course he's politicking to get the belt, and or Tony Khan more likely has got a TV deal he's trying to shop, so he wants to. But now that didn't come to fruition, I am like scratching my head, like, what was the pitch? We need to give Mark Briscoe a big singles match in a pay-per-view. I guess I'm amenable to that. Like, I need a match, you know, being Jericho. Therefore, you know, Mark Briscoe's who I anoint as my opponent this month. Think I'll do a job with him, kid. I don't know. Like, I don't really get the motivation behind it. Even if, definitely higher than UJP. Not massively though. Like, I think it was 3.25 to 3.5 star range, but it was good rather than what I expected it to be, which was bad. That's where I land on it.
And it says so much about Mark Briscoe in 2024 but he can get these
When
kind
he's
of
serious.
performances.
Even back in the day, to be honest, back when Jay was the ROH champion, those couple of runs, Mark would, because the team weren't active, would slot into this comedy undercard act where the red kung fu stuff he'd lean on a lot. And we're actually seeing a lot of that type of him on ROH TV. Too much of it, the conglomeration, word of the week comedy nonsense. This was more the Mark Briscoe I want to see, and that where there's money in Mark Briscoe is a performance like this. So, yeah, there were positives to come out of it, definitely.
There's an Eddie Kingston-esque quality to him.
Yeah, I can see that. Absolutely. Similar, yeah.
It's unconventional. It doesn't fit into a prototypical 2024 wrestler and what we expect of them, but it's all the better for it.
Definitely.
And he's got the best elbow in the business. That fucking
brilliant. Froggy Bow.
Froggy Bow.
And the way he hits the Cactus Jack one off the apron as well to the outside, the way he fly, like he's like the technique of that in the air just looks fucking first class. Like I'm like fully so on board with with Mark Briscoe. I fucking love him. He's like one of the guys who we see that he's on the show, and he's actually, when I talked about earlier on going through the list of people that I actually want to watch, he's one of the people who every time I'm always going to watch his match.
You know what? We had it during or around, well, pretty much at when Jay died. We had Briscoe's mixtape on the docket, didn't we? And it was like, it just feels too soon to go right to that. Time might be starting to feel right, boys. Yeah. That'll be a fun little trip. Maybe we'll do that at some point. But maybe James will answer the call. We'll see. But following on from there, we go to our main event. It's here finally. We pretty much talked the post-match angle, really. So there's only really the contents of the in-ring to talk about, and to maybe I had a couple of misgivings about the angle as a whole, but as a bit of business, hopefully it hasn't been lost. That I think we all see the positives in what they did here, and I thought the match was. I'll be honest. Is it damn with faint praise? I did fall asleep while watching it live, so I don't know what that means. But watching it back today, I came away with a very big appreciation for the work in here. Obviously, Danielson coming out to Final Countdown, and that leading into the Moxley brawl, which was it's like a New Jack match with Europe playing in the background. What's not to love? Very much enjoyed all of that. Well, I'll let you take it away, Gareth, when it comes to the contents of the match. But I'll just say briefly for me first, they told a really good story in this, especially watching it knowing the results, because I watched this in stages. I watched the first bit and then fell asleep. Then I got up the next morning and was like, well, I want it unspoiled, know what happens. So I watched the finish, and then I watched the angle, and then today I rewatched the entire thing. But it was kind of interesting watching it with that, that knowledge today, going, okay, this is the story they're trying to tell. Danielson wants to do it. You might make the argument, maybe Danielson should have directly put over a Hangman Page or a Darby Allin even, or a straight. It does. That's where it reminds me of the Undertaker streak, where it was like, no, we want to reheat Brock and get him over. As much as we shouldn't be in that position, this felt like Danielson being like, no, I want to get Moxley over, and there's been report in the last couple of days that this was Danielson's idea, that it was Moxley that he wants to put over. And you watch the match with those goggles on, and it's like, fuck me, I've never seen a wrestler do so much to put somebody over in the way the match was worked. It was unique, to be honest. Like, Danielson got some comebacks, but watching this back today, it's like Moxley took most of the match, and those comebacks that would usually lead to the big crescendo didn't. They led to what, if it was a real sport, what could happen is the babyface just has nothing left, and that is a story they've been telling over the last while or so, that Danielson might not have many of these types of matches left in him, and he ended up on empty by the end of this one. And definitive Moxley win that was maybe one hard to rate when it comes to like star ratings, but I think as far as the story they went out to tell, it's almost a 5 on that merit, I would say, Gareth, rewatching it today. But like I say, you're our detail man, I'll let you go into it. I imagine maybe misgivings of the angle afterwards aside, this was right up on your street as far as the work goes within the bells.
Oh man, like thoroughly enjoyed this. Like again, just as you talk about there with the story in the match, and then just so like quite clearly just getting that point across within this of the two men on their very different missions. Moxley's out there because he wants to absolutely fucking end Bryan Danielson. He wants to destroy him, finish him for good. Danielson's in there where he's been obviously subjected to like what he had done with that turn, but his run of late is almost that kind of like valiantly trying to maintain his legacy and his title, his career. He's like fighting for survival, taped up, like every inch of his body almost taped up, like broken down man that they've been like, it's not just a story within the match. It's been a point that they've been telling over a period of time as well, and just trying to kind of, the physical odds are against him, the numerical odds are against him, like in this particular match with the interferences as well. And I think just the way that they went about like telling that story, particularly the Moxley trying to end him element, that was just what came across so strongly and just worked so well in this one. Because again, I think this was a match where, sometimes where a match needs a jump start on the back of the angle that has happened previously. For this one to the jump start there on the turnbuckle, it's just no, right into it. I'm trying to fucking kill you, kind of thing. Like that. This ain't a wrestling match. This is a fight. This is a war. This is and you've got no doubt what type of match this is. This is as you go straight in there, and then obviously it's cool with the final countdown playing in the background there. But like, choking them with the cables and things like that on the outside, you're immediately being able to use that because the bell hasn't rung yet to really again get that raw violence across, kind of thing. That's it's almost we talk about the TV hasn't necessarily joined the dots between those two moments. The pre-match here before the bell rings has effectively joined those two dots as well, because that has continued there. And then I think you talk about just the sheer volume of offense that Moxley got through the course of the match here. And I've just written down here just like Moxley just dominates, whether he's doing things like the stomps and the hitting him with forearms and chops, and Danielson trying to fire up, but like he's staggering, he's all over the place, and Moxley can just sort of keep getting the better of him, attacking the neck with like the neck breakers, stomping his head, stomping his head in, and etc. Marina kind of joining him from the outside. Is that Danielson, the volume of offense that he gets in the first 10 minutes of this match is absolutely minute, really. It's something that they don't give him much. And then even like the hope spot doesn't last very long. Like, there's obviously Mox goes for the pile driver on the outside onto the concrete, and Danielson sort of turns it into the backdrop there. But pretty much that they come straight out of that, where Danielson's like biting him straight to Mox, sort of cutting him off, and been back on top sort of relatively quickly there as well. So again, they give him a bit, but they don't give him a lot really there. And then I think what they do manage to do is that when they get in there with the one-to-one stuff, once Marina Shafir's been kicked out of there, that's when you start to sort of almost see Danielson kind of bleed back into it. The odds have been evened a little bit, but he's sort of so beaten down at this point as well that there's only so much that he can give as well. So it's not just the physical beating that he's took in and injuries that he's had in previous weeks. It's that everything that's been in that first 10, 15 minutes of the match up to that point. And there's that bit in the match where like I think it's one of those where it'll just come back and just be in my brain as like just standing like the test of time. And it's that bit where like the crowd are just organically chanting like you're going to get your fucking head kicked in, and Danielson fires up, and the crowd, and that's like and like he does it, and then he applies the label lock, and it was like on reflection at the end of the match, as I sat there and I thought about what had gone on before, and I was like, God, that was it. That was his last kind of like valiant hero babyface moment. The crowd, the fire up and things like that. The crowd's been with him after all this like adversity they'd had to face up to that point, and it's kind of like, I don't know, I had a bit like lump in my throat kind of thing as I thought about that. I thought about that like a bit later on. It was wild, but then again, obviously, as you build into the finish there, I think they've managed to bring it to the point there where Moxley is like quite done in as well as they get to the end there. The offense that Danielson's been able to have in that second part of the match has just been a bit more hard hitting. So it's kind of like, it still felt, even though I knew the result, I was trying to watch it through the eyes of somebody who didn't know the result, and it still felt like it still felt sort of like quite in the balance there for me. To take it to that point, I think there was where like Danielson countered with that short sort of shoulder suplex, and then like he landed the psycho knee, and for like a second time it was like a 2 count there, and it was almost, the crowd bit and things, and you were along with the ride for the crowd there. But the thing, he's going to pull it out of the bag one more time, on this, this because that's what he does, kind of, and that getting that little peak there just right before the end just probably made the end feel even colder and a bit more bittersweet, kind of thing. That I think they took you on a journey from thinking he's getting battered, he's coming back, he's going to win here now, kind of thing, and then they managed to sort of like pull the tablecloth away from you, almost kind of like right at the end, and when he hit the gotch and then like into that bulldog choke, and he just sort of fades backwards, kind of into the choke. It was just like just the feeling of just like what, like it was insane. It was so perfectly like delivered, the emotional journey that they took you on through that match, that was contained within this match, but was also contained within kind of the story of Bryan's recent run as well. Loved it. It's one of them. I've watched it once, so I feel like I haven't thought about the detail and things like that, sufficiently in certain like places, but there's so much there, even on first watch, kind of thing, that you're just like taken out of it on that journey. Like what a boss match.
I'd recommend multiple watches because, like, it's funny, my opinion shifted on it from, like I say, watching the result unspoiled to then watching it again, knowing it. Because, like, I was split on the finish. Because, like, there's a Undertaker Brock, like, stunned silence at the end, which is kind of what you want. But they were silent when Moxley grabbed the choke. And it was like, maybe they've overthought this and it's too clever for its own good. Because nobody really bought that there was anything significant happening when Moxley grabbed the choke. But then as you talk about it there, Gareth, and as I rewatched it today, I'm like, but maybe that's a positive too, because they didn't see it coming, like there's levels to what they did here that, like, on rewatch I've maybe shifted my opinion a little bit. I don't know about what was your reaction to it watching it, JP? It's something very different.
I watched it spoiled, and I liked different. Like, I knew about the result, and I'd seen a thumbnail, I think it was from Post Wrestling. I'd seen it was just like a depressing end, and I thought, well, I'll be the judge of that. We'll get around to the ending on that. And I thought, when watching it spoiled, I thought, in many ways, I was going, this is like the perfect retirement match. What is he doing? He's getting his opponent off as like a mega heel for like beating him. That stunned silence is a crowd that is like a lot of, like, I suppose, American wrestling crowds and Western wrestling crowds. I say wrestling crowds in general. We're used to the happy ending, but you shouldn't always get the happy ending. So therefore, they have this idea. I thought they were getting silent because they thought, oh shit, he is actually losing. Because I think they'd made an assumption, but he's from Washington. He can't lose. AEW is not the company that does this, but it's like, it's the most Bryan Danielson thing to do.
Well, I was thinking his title run's been shit. He can't possibly lose tonight. He's got to face someone better than Jack Perry, surely. No.
And I didn't want to. When we came to the weekend show, and you were like adamant, it's like Moxley's winning. This is what they're doing. Moxley's winning, and I was like, but I kind of don't want to believe it. Yeah. Now that I've seen it, I thought, well, actually, in practice, he's not gone forever. Like, he's not wrestling a full-time schedule, so you can go back to this in a grudge match. I don't want to see it for the guts of like a year or anything else along those lines, but you can have that kind of match at some point. You can have Danielson kind of like get involved while this group are running roughshod over the company. I thought just just the sheer, like, I mean, I loved it was weird. I mean, I just thought to myself, wouldn't it be great to see a New Jack match where you didn't have natural born killers, but you had Europe? That's a very different kind of like atmosphere in there as
It
well.
worked.
But I really, really, really enjoyed it, and I've seen it twice. And for me, I didn't feel the 27 minutes that this goes. And we've already said about the ending of it. The ending was very much the kind of thing that I wanted. I was happy seeing, which I know is a bit of an oxymoron, given that it is quite a depressing finish, but because it's different, because it's like watching a horror film that has like a really bleak ending to it. You're like, oh fuck, they're not meant to do that, but they have, and it just throws you completely off track. The idea of the bad guys winning, and wouldn't it be it's the most Bryan Danielson thing in the world to do? It's like, no, when you take me out, you're gonna fucking take me out, and you're gonna have my last mate fucking try and, you know, put a plastic bag over my head and try and smother me to death again. You know, I thought all of, and Gareth sort of mentioned brilliantly, you're doing yourself a disservice by saying you haven't gone into detail. You really have. There's so much stuff that's going on here from two kind of high level performers, even if it didn't reach obviously the heights of Wembley and what, you know, a fully fit Bryan Danielson could do. But that's not the story they're going for here. It's about a broken down man who knows he's on his last legs, and he's up against someone who's been off for a good while, has come back kind of stronger, and is merciless and ruthless. And if anything, you want to think this is wrestling booking 101, isn't it? Which is, you get over the heel as a mega heel and a bastard, and no one likes them. Why? Because they've taken everyone's favorite wrestler and they've gone and fucking killed him.
Yeah.
Like, in a figurative sense, obviously. And for that reason, like, I love this as a piece of pro wrestling storytelling. I thought it was tremendous.
Which is interesting because I'm definitely higher on the match than I was the angle. And I was just more mixed on the angle rather than just outright everything about this was great for all the reasons we mentioned earlier. And as we kept saying, it's follow-up, isn't it? Because again, the other point I maybe concede to some of the doubters is bleak is, you know, a storytelling device you can do, but it's a risky one when everything feels so bleak going into this pay-per-view. You know, hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel, and a good story will, you know, this is the start of a good story rather than the end of one. But like I said, we talked all at the top. As a match, I'd go, don't know, like, it's hard, isn't it? Like, because it's like, it's not like it went for a different vibe, didn't it, than any other match. It's one of those tough to kind of place. I don't know if you've got an outright star rating for it, Gareth. I'd go above 4, but I don't know how much above 4.
It's funny because, like, I went 4.5, and I was thinking on second watch this could go to 4.75 or it could go to 4.25. Kind of, it was like it was in that sort of strange territory for me. There is that, like, I might, again, the more I think about it and then watch it again, and some of the like nuance in the way that it was put together might like elevate it in my mind. But on like first watch, it felt like 4.5 to me. Like, I just thought the overall structure of like every part of it, start to end, felt right. Like, it felt correct for where the two characters were and are, and again, coming back to those motivations of what they were trying to achieve and things like that. Everything just felt like it fit the dots of where they are right now. And obviously the execution of it was fucking like first class because Bryan Danielson was involved in it, but Mox lived up to his side of the bargain big time here in terms of the aggression and just like violence and just utter bastards that he brought to the table in this match as well. Like, so that's where kind of feels like it sits for me.
I'm a coward. 4+ JP. I'm going old school Meltzer. Just doing a plus.
I'm gonna rate this in the totality, and that I probably liked the end angle more than you, Benno. And as a result, when viewing it as a complete package from beginning to end, I'm gonna go 4.5. Having rewatched it, I think it's going to be the kind of thing that holds up. Obviously, if the follow-up angles and everything else work well, then it's going to be I think the match itself will end up being elevated as a result. If it goes nowhere, then it's going to seem kind of weird and somewhat needless. But that's the risk you're taking with AEW in 2024. But 4.5 is what my gut was saying, and that's what I'm going to stick with. It was my favourite match on the show.
So, yeah.
Do you know what as well? Marina Shafir could have taken away from this match, but she didn't. She added to this match.
Every time you say the name, I was like, mental notes, talk about Marina Shafir. She's fucking brilliant. She's so fucking cool, isn't she? What a badass. Like, even if it's just spamming those knees, isn't it? There's just, there's like an aura about her. You can feel it, like, because Moxley's clearly taking a big interest in her. Like, he feels like she's being directed by him, like, stand this way, hit him this way, like, make your demeanor like this. Like, she's such a crucial part of this act. Loving her.
She's like, I mean, it's we've all got sort of like fond memories of China, but this is like, I don't want to say work rate China, but this is like a version of China for like 2024, where you just think, yeah, it works. Why? Because she's legit an ex-UFC fighter, so she brings that immediate credibility. But how she presents herself, and I know it's a simple little thing. Him going back using the New Japan Death Rider music just works so much better as a heel. And the entire package just makes me feel so much better about Moxley as a wrestler in AEW. You just think, no, that's the little change. We don't get that. You're not going to get that crowd pop when they hear Wild thing. Instead, you're going to quite a downbeat kind of tune, and it works. And just her presentation, it's just fucking awesome.
Well, yeah.
I thought you'd have enjoyed. I thought you'd have enjoyed that part of his entrance as well, Benno, where he walked past the merch table as well, so you could see there was only 3 T-shirts on sale for.
Apparently, lots more at the house show tonight. They had loads. Apparently, queues out the door. I was told by a possible person who did the run-in. For those who watched the video, and maybe not for the people who listen to the audio. But any overall thoughts on the show, Gareth? Before we move on, there's nothing in the press to talk about. Costco guy AJ made the challenge for full gear.
Fuck is he?
I've been enjoying that. Like, the Costco guys. I was going to ask if you were a fan, so I'm guessing no. But good spot for QT Marshall. I've enjoyed their little segments. That was another notable thing coming out of the show. But yeah, unless you got it on the Costco guys, Gareth, are they over in your house? I'm guessing. No
idea who you're talking about. But the one thing I forgot to mention in that main event, that the thing that could have elevated it further for me is because I'm so Nigel pilled at the moment after our Nigel show is when Mox slapped the headphones off him, and then and then on the commentary when Nigel said something like, I think I want Bryan to win here or something because Mox is so horrible, or so, he said something along those lines, and then because we didn't get the moment after the match between Nigel and Bryan on TV of them, like, because obviously they had to show Kip Sabian running into the back or something like that instead of having some kind of embrace or something. I was thinking, Nigel's going to jump. Nigel's going to save him here, kind of at the end. Like that was my feat. Like I thought that was happening because of that setup. So if that had happened, full 5, that would have been because that would have just been like dream situation in that after that recent show we did.
They can just do rebound lariats against each other, just spam them. That could be the match, like a Brock Lesnar suplex match, but both just going back and forth. Matty would love that. Nigel went harder in the post. I was going to say from the presser, JP. Like that's the only notable thing, that he was very much on the side of this was disgusting and not the way like Bryan's career should have ended and stuff. And I was like, I wish we got more of that on here. Like I wish we got just a little bit more than we got, because he kind of went silent for the last 10 minutes.
He did. Although I kind of enjoyed that little bit of subtlety from him while he sat next to that stroppy bastard JR, who felt like you're lucky. It's like he reverted. It's just like he regressed back to.
Where you been, guys?
It's just like
awful.
What they should have said. Well, we've been doing our homework, mate. Where the fuck have you been?
Did you hear him on the fucking? We didn't mention. Steph mentioned it in the chat. The fucking the J Driller spot when Excalibur said something along the lines of, "We know what's coming," and Joe was like, "Well, tell us then," because he doesn't know, and it's like it's his finish. Like I mean, he's just like clearly that passive aggression coming out. Oh, he's Jim Ross.
Like as soon as he says that, he says, "Well, because I've done my homework, mate. What about you?"
Yeah.
I'm a legend, and it's got fuck off. Like that, I would have enjoyed that dynamic, particularly if Excalibur just said, "Well, fuck off." Like that would have added it to me. But I thought Nigel on commentary, just he wasn't too OTT, but him being supportive of Bryan kind of worked and made you think there will be an angle at some point where Nigel gets somewhat destroyed. And, yeah.
Well, like the tail end of Randy Orton's career, I'm going to run through some other stuff unless anyone's got any other notes. Again, WrestleDream, overall good, long show, dragged, could have dropped a few matches. That's my my overall take on it. Not in the top 3 AEW pay-per-views even this year, I would say, but not a bad pay-per-view by any means. It was a good addition. Even if
nothing really shit the bed, even the stuff I didn't like, you would objectively look at and say that's a decent match.
I enjoyed the show. I think the thing that stood out for me the most was that I don't know how many of the matches on this pay-per-view were enhanced by watching the television in between the 2 pay-per-views, and that's a, you know, I think that's something that just stands out like a sore thumb, especially the nature of some of these matches being thrown together at the, you know, quite quickly and you know relatively out of nowhere before the pay-per-view. There was not a lot of something behind them. So in isolation, it's like, here you go, watch some wrestling, press play, have a great time watching this. If you're looking for a bit more, probably didn't deliver really on that front.
WCW early 90s, wasn't it? People are going to be watching these videos in a few years and go, what was wrong with it? Like I was as a kid, what's wrong with WCW's booking? All these pay-per-views are great. If you're following for any meaning, you ain't getting it. But anyway, I think we agree there. AEW pay-per-view review.exe, Simon says. Pretty much, that's what we always wind up saying. But yeah, no other notes on that. I'll bomb through some other quick stuff. Don't know much about Dynamite this week, apart from the fact it's Queen Amanita versus Mercedes Moné was set up in a backstage segment. They flew Mercedes in just for that. She cut another bad promo and didn't draw a penny. That's what she does. But we'll see. I assume we'll get a big Moxley promo segment on the show, you'd imagine. A few WWE notes. I'm going to make it quick. Do you want to stick around, Gareth? I don't know if you've got a bit of New Japan to talk as well. Up to you.
I tell you what, lads, I've been up since 2:45 a.m. today.
I will let you run.
I'll get myself to bed if you don't mind.
Matty will be right in that seat, mate, the second you leave. But no, been great having you on, Gareth. Always good for these big AEW PVUs. Keep coming thick and fast. And yeah, we'll have you back on the Patreon content. GRAPPL lads coming up. Looking forward to that too.
Spot on.
Mate, you have a good long sleep.
Yeah, I'll
you
go.
heard it, mate.
Yeah, I was going to say a nice one. All right, great stuff, lads. Well, yeah, catch up with you soon.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Well, I'll blow through quickly, JP, through some of the stuff. Solo beat Jimmy, apparently, on Smackdown. And the Kevin Owens segments were good on Smackdown. Bloodline segments, less so. Story, capital letters. We'll hear about it the next time Matty's on. They're going to go to Raw and they're going to get Jay. Goosebumps. It was mostly well executed, even if not much happened. But that's SmackDown for you. We won't go through that.
Kevin Owens apparently there's nowhere, by the way. He's not fucking going anywhere.
Big Jim, he's your new man. Rock apparently might not compete at WrestleMania 41. To get into some quick WWE news and notes. He then responded to somebody on Instagram saying, "Don't believe that fucking bullshit." So I guess we'll see. Any thoughts on that as we bomb through, JP?
I think you need to have him on it, don't you? I mean, I find that kind of incredible.
It's either that or you do Cody Roman 3 at Mania next year. Like, what else can you realistically do?
That's really it. I think you do kind of need him. He'll be there. This is him working those kind of like bigger angles. That was my immediate thing. I was like, nah, this bloke is kind of full of shit. He says this stuff a lot. He
came out in the Observer where he was like, okay, that probably means Dwayne rang Dave, which is generally what happens when it's rock news. Only for Dwayne to then go on Instagram and go, yeah, it's all bullshit. But we played this game before. But yeah, I guess that will be my backup to go to the rubber match with Romy and Cody. But you've just got to do Cody and Rock at some point, whether that be... If they can't get WrestleMania, maybe it's a long way away, but SummerSlam next year, I could potentially see that match. And then you do the Roman match further down the line. But we will see. Other quick WWE notes, Shinsuke Nakamura is going to be on Noah's the new year coming up in January as that relationship continues to bear fruit. Who's he working, JP? Ulka Sasaki.
Sasaki. Do you know what? Sad. I don't know. Fuck all about him. You feel like I should do at this point, which means
feels like one of your guys.
Nakamura's winning. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I'm not mad on his look. It kind of looks like Konosuke Takeshita light, doesn't it? By the look on here as well. But this is, I mean, it's more that idea that it feels like, okay, we're going to give you something, Noah. Who are we going to give you? We're going to give you Nakamura in there. So, like, it's the thing that it's an easy kind of sop for them to do, and it's not like he'll be missed from WWE TV. It feels like it's the most obvious thing to do.
On that note of people going to Japan, obviously the other big, and it just kind of says where we are in the world, that it's 2 hours 49 minutes in. It's like, oh yeah, Zack Sabre Jr. won the IWGP World Title. Few news and notes coming out of King and Pro Wrestling this morning. I did watch the main event live. I was actually still in bed on my laptop. It's cold. And, threw that on. I was very much got me through the work morning. Did that match. We'll probably talk more New Japan coming out of World Quest at the weekend. But there were a few news and notes outside of that coming out of the show. Tanahashi's final match, not the least of which, not just Bryan calling it. January 4th, 2026 is the date for Tanahashi's last match, which is hopeful. Another full calendar year and then some before he retires. And yeah, we'll see how Tanahashi's holding up by the end of it. I'd love to see an Okada match in there somewhere. So I don't know who said it, but somebody floated the John Cena match. I don't think it's politically possible, but God, I'd love that to happen before Tanahashi's.
That would be great.
Retires. Maybe he'll hit it. Maybe not quite that, but maybe we'll get a couple of bucket list items from him. And also on that note, Young Bucks video where on King of Pro Wrestling, they're coming in for Wrestle Dynasty, which is not WrestleDream, which is a different show, which is January the 6th, 5th. It's on that weekend. 5th it is, and it's the day 2 show with AEW coming up. So that'll be something. But yeah, the lead JP, Zack Sabre Jr. won the IWGP World Title. I presume you got your ticket for Royal Quest now to see him in
that's all sorted, man.
But did you watch the match today?
I did watch the match. I thought, obviously the right result, the only proper result it should have been. And you know what? That crowd wanted that result as well, given their reactions to this. Like, this is, for all the talk of how much Naito is loved and everything else, this was a crowd that just didn't want him as champion. That's my impression. They kind of they could see that it wasn't good. It wasn't fair for him to even be in this kind of position on here. And I thought the way they worked the match, given how broken down he is probably as good as you're going to get with him. That doesn't mean it's a great match. I think it was like basically a standard New Japan main event, which they worked a lot of stuff on the ground, which you can do with Zack, because you're not asking Naito to run around the place. So he can put him in extended submissions and everything else, and they could get away with it. And then when it was hitting towards the finishing stretch, the crowd really sort of woke up, because they knew they were going to be seeing a title change, and it took several finishes for him to kind of beat it. And he was pulling out all sorts in there as well, wasn't he? Like the Gotch-style pile driver that he pulled out in there. And then I think he did like 2 Sabre drivers as well to win. And
3, I think it was, because one got a 1 count, 3. One got a 2 count, and then one got a 3 count. I like that symmetry. Yeah, again, we'll have to be brief, but like for me, it was a New Japan main event for all its bells and whistles, but on the clear low end of your epic New Japan main event, because Naito is just very clearly done. It was interesting watching it, having not being invested in New Japan really for the last couple of years and not really paying attention too much to these things. But every time I see Naito, it's like another part of him has fell off. He wouldn't have made it to fucking Wrestle Kingdom if they were doing the defense there. Will said in the chat there, he thinks Naito's going to be the challenger at the Dome. I don't see it. I think this was to get it out the way and just stop forcing Naito to be in these positions. For me, I didn't feel like they were a negative Naito crowd as much as they were a positive Zack Sabre Jr. crowd with all the TNDK merch everywhere and all of that. Well, at least they weren't certainly as negative as they were for the idea of SHOWNOTES coming out at the end of the show. But I will say on the physical look of both guys as well, as much as Naito looks broken down, watching that live, I was like, well, Zack's clearly winning the belt, because have you seen the chunk he's put on? Not in a negative way, but he's very clearly been told, you're winning the belt, mate. put a little bit of weight on for us. We need you to be a heavyweight guy. And maybe I'm just noticing it for the first time and it's been more gradual than that, but you can see it in his legs and his upper body. Like, he's clearly filled out a bit purposely for this. And as a moment, it was fantastic. I'm so glad I watched it live, because while the match was on the lower end of this style of match, the post-match was just lovely to see. To see the TMDK guys, hugging and kissing him and around them, and him going into the crowd. I was hoping he'd find a rogue snowboy somewhere in the crowd who I believe was in attendance. He gave it 2.5 stars on a spreadsheet today. But, going round and, celebrating with all the fans there, and you can tell it's genuine. You can tell... Same with the way he cut the promo post-match, that he's completely fluent in Japanese now, and he's so embedded in that culture and in being, and he said it in the promo, didn't he? Naito, I'm not going anywhere. This is my home. He's never seen New Japan as a stepping stone. It is just where he wants to be, and you could tell it meant so much to him to be like, for whatever it means now, I am the IWGP World Champion. I've done it, and it was a fucking... It was lovely to see, shaking hands with, our great friend Chris Charlton and Walker Stewart, who did the cracking job in that main event. I thought they were lovely moments to see, and it was just worth watching just for that, just to soak that in and go, yeah, he deserves this, absolutely.
It's one of the few times that I've seen New Japan put on something that felt like a big spectacle and a big deal in a long time. And I know obviously we're talking about this right at the end of the show where we've talked about like
it's where they are in the news cycle now, unfortunately.
It is where they are.
We'll talk about
and they need to earn that right as well. It's just that with Zack there, it's like, and I thought, well, actually, is it some ways, is he winning this title to be a transition to, say, a newer, younger guy getting it at the Dome? And unless they're turning Shota Umino heel, it shouldn't fucking be him. Because, in fact, actually, his reactions remind me of the reactions that Naito used to get when he was like a baby face who they felt was being forced upon them. It's just like, no, we don't like you. They just don't like him. And that character change and everything else is sorely needed from him. And we'll get that. And that'll be an interesting dynamic when we get like a heel Shota Umino in this. But you're right, it was lovely. It was like, it felt like a really big deal. Even if I don't know who Hartley Jackson is, there was just like one bloke, and I was like, who the fuck is he?
The bald guy.
Who's he? Some bald bloke who was there. I was like, well, why is this fella here? But
it's funny because you can tell, can't you, whenever like Robbie Eagles are around, it's like clearly TMDK as actual friends, and then there's all these bolt-on members who he's all right with.
Just blokes. Knocking around the place. But this is, I mean, if I was giving it a rating, I'd probably go 3.5 stars, which is really on the generous end, because I think it was,
I think that's fair,
as good as they could have done given the circumstances as well. And judging by the other stuff on the card, which I saw brief moments of it when I was like flicking through this evening to try and get an idea of how it was by far and away like the kind of the best thing on the card by the looks of it. I mean, there was stuff earlier on, like in terms of the junior tag match I saw, but there was some good stuff because it was like a bit more spectacular, but ultimately a lot less meaningful. Whereas this at least feels like, okay, there's a different dynamic, and you're getting someone in the main event at Wrestle Kingdom who's going to be able to put on a match. And it's like you mentioned about the bulk being important. It's the fact it's the fluent Japanese.
Yeah,
because it's just that delivery he has in Japanese as well, that the crowds are like, oh no, this is a guy who takes it seriously, wrestling in Japan. Because and I always thought that was the thing that cemented Ospreay. It's like, no, he's made the effort to learn Japanese. It's not an easy language to go and learn. And, you can't just do a few lessons on Duolingo and hope for the best. It's like, no, he's immersed himself in the culture, and fair fucking play to him.
I loved, I say the commentary was good, and I enjoyed the little quips about the celebrating in the Isle of Sheppey and all that. It's coming home stuff type of stuff. I enjoyed that too. And Ramen nails it there. He should be champion until they've got until they get the fucking, because based on who came out, Shingo, great, needs must, and Shingo's one of the greatest of all time in ring, so cool. But then when Shota Umino is one of the other guys, Ahmed Sanada is the guy for this weekend. It's like, oh, all right, we're going to be a little while before New Japan is, come up with some kind of solution to the rot that is clearly set on these last few years, what a great steady set of hands Zack could be as champion for a little while now, and what a great reward for him if they give him that. And it was, as much as like the card has not sold me on Royal Quest this weekend, I'm not going to be there. I think I'll watch the stream and then we'll go live right after it for Spotlight as my current plan, depending on when that's planning on finishing. But the one thing I'm like, I wish I was there for, and there's not many things that make me wish I was in Crystal Palace, JP, but to see that homecoming, we've had those homecomings, haven't we, with Ospreay and with Zack before when he's done different things. That's going to be a great moment this weekend, and I'm sure the Rev Pro crowd will in Doncaster will give him a good reception on Saturday too.
I think that'll help shift a few more tickets, which is really important. The fact that we're still getting to see him somewhat on the reg turning over in the UK as well. But he's earned the right to this. He has served his time. There's been so many kind of like he's won New Japan Cups and everything else. He's had like title shots in the past, and it's never felt like they were going to seriously go with him because there are other more flashier toys that they could go with. Now they've kind of got a guy who, when you think about it in terms of his style and how he presents himself and how much, like I said, he's ingratiated himself to the New Japan fan base and the Japanese culture in general. He's a really strong figurehead for them for what they need at this point in time. Of like, actually, here's a guy who's a really good fucking wrestler, and he's our guy on top. And yeah, I'm just glad they made the change.
Well, more on that next week, but yeah, that's all we got time for this week as we edge towards the 3 hour point. JP, yeah, anything else to say? Obviously, got the plugs away at the top of the show, but we got plenty coming up. And yeah, more fun.
Shane tomorrow,
in
mate.
October.
Zack Sabre Jr. to Shane. Yeah, exactly.
The best in the world. Which one? Yeah. that will be fun. I'm looking forward to recording that with Platt. That will be out this week if you haven't heard it already. No Mercy 2001 with Michael Hamflett is available on the feed, as well as all our Dealer's Choice shows from last month. Critically acclaimed Dealer's Choice, I would say, as well as the Return of GRAPPL Lads, which will be out later this month, episode 2, and yeah, Film Club on Halloween Horror is coming, new episode of Retro coming, all of that good stuff as well. But yeah, anything else from you, JP?
That's it. All I'm going to say, if you want some of our lovely merch, and I'm wearing the Ringer tee here, you can't really see it properly.
Sorry.
So I'll stand up, I'll wake up the dog. You go to chopped-tees.com and /grapple. You'll see all of our goodness as well. If you want to become a patron, patreon.com/grapple, or become a YouTube member, youtube.com/@grapple. All the plugs all over again as well. Loads of brilliant goodness as well. And I'm looking forward to the Halloween film club we've got later on, particularly because it feels like a me and Matty thing. We're going to curate it, and I've got an idea. We're nominating some horrors each. We're going to get the patrons to also help sort of nominate a couple of films, and then that'll go to the vote. And yeah, I think that'll be an interesting selection, particularly from a horror perspective. So
can't wait to hear it. Well, yep, that's all coming up. But yeah, thank you to everybody who's tuned into us live. Thank you to our live patrons who've been with us till this late hour. Thank you to Gareth in his absence, and a roving Matty for reporting. He'll still be trying to call in the next half hour show, I'm sure. But yeah, thank you to our Kings of the Mountain as always. Thank you, Conor Laughlin, Eddie Sideburns, Chris Platt, Ewan Cameron, Carl Gack, Simon Mulvaney, and Mark Buckledy. And we will catch you all again for Shane. Good night, all.
bye.
See ya.